All right. I wanted to talk about this comic book that I received for about a week and a half. Haven't had a chance really to go over it. Not that I haven't been wanting to. I have been backing a few crowd funded comic book, independent comic book creators recently, and I just wanted to kind of look at some that I have been that I backed and I've received. Now I still have one or two that I have not received yet. I don't expect them till like late summer, but I went ahead and backed them anyway because it was just something interesting that I thought looked interesting, kind of diversifying some of my interest in the independent comic books lately. But first one I wanted to look at was King Cryptid. It's by a guy. The series creator is Peter Samedi. The reason I'm wearing these stupid latex gloves is I've got stuff on my hands that I've been treating my skin with, and I didn't want to get it all over my comic books. Normally, I don't look at physical copies of comic books. I normally look at digital copies. I'll be looking at some digital copies in a little bit, some older comic books. But this is a series creator Peter Samedi. I'd never heard of this. Publisher is Alterna Comics, and this is the script. I bought it was like a $25 package, and as you can see here, he signs everything. And this is the actual script from issues 1 through 4. Now it doesn't go over dialogue, but it just kind of gives a rundown of the characters: King Cryptid, Behemoth, some of the characters you'll encounter in the 4 issues, and it's just kind of a overview, page by page, like the page 1 splash page. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's kind of cool. I wanted to get the package that kind of included this because I'm interested in making my own comic book, which I'm kind of in the early stages of that process. And I kind of wanted to see what other people, get some feedback, just examples of what some other successful people are doing with theirs. And yeah, it's kind of cool. So I read through this, and it kind of gives a break. It just gives a real basic breakdown of each panel, and then I can kind of go back and go through all the issues and reference panel for panel, and you kind of get into the artist's head a little bit, like maybe what he was thinking of, how he was trying to visualize that story from these pages. So I thought that was pretty cool to get that. I'm going to be talking about 3 different comic books, but I got issues 1 through 4 of King Cryptid. You get a blank cover variant. I was never. This is the first blank cover variant thing that I've ever received from any comic book. I don't go to conventions. I'm assuming that this is for like maybe doing your own fan art on the cover or what have you. I'm not real interested in these kind of variant covers or anything like that. But it's kind of cool to get 2 copies of issue 1. You can see here on the front page. One thing I wanted to say about this is it's made of the old pulpy paper, and that right there was like right there was surprising, but it was also welcome because I am a big fan of the old feel. I love the old feel of the pulp paper of comic books. I don't like the big. It's not that I don't like the slick, colorful pages and the higher quality pages. I do, but this I prefer to feel that pulpy paper in my hand. I don't know. It's just something that makes the art look different. It's just a throwback, and I'll have to say this entire series so far, 1 through 4, is definitely a throwback to the comic books from late 70s, early 80s, and that to me was welcome, because anybody that knows me knows I'm not a big fan of the state of modern comic books right now. So anything that gives me that feeling, you can call it nostalgia or whatever. whatever label you want to slap on it, anything that gives me that feel that I had of reading old 70s and 80s comic books. Yeah, I'm all aboard for it. Now, let me just say, the only reason I knew about this, King Cryptid here from Alterna Comics, was from a social media post from Ethan Van Sciver, who is the Cyber Frog Comics Gate, all caps comic guy. He used to work for DC, I believe, late 1990s, early 2000s. I believe he was most well known for doing Green Lantern. I love his art style. I like Cyber Frog. I bought the old 90s collector's edition of Cyber Frog. I think it's called Warts and All. I bought the big thick the book he had covering the 90s older Cyber Frog. I'm not like some kind of Cyber Frog super fan or anything, and I don't collect like the action figures of anything like that. But Ethan Van Sciver is the only reason I knew about this, that this even existed. And to be honest, of all of the comic books that I backed, this is the one that I kind of least was excited for and had the least expectations for, because I knew nothing about it. And this one actually became my favorite of all I've received so far. Mainly due just because of the writing style. But let me show the other copy. This is a colored copy of the colored double. You got a black and white cover on the back. I like the flip cover thing. I think that's the good way to do variant covers. Just have a variant cover on the back. You can just flip it over. Kind of cool. But yeah, after reading through these, I discovered something I really liked about the guy writing these. And I knew nothing about the guy, Peter Simeti, but it's apparent that he's trying to capture that look and feel of older, call it what you want, Bronze Age comic books, and he does just that. So let me open it up here. Words and Letters by Peter Simeti. Artwork by Christian Rossi. I have no idea who that is. See if I can line it up. I'm not used to using this overhead camera here. But he's got the first thing that a lot of times I'll try to articulate like the first thing that pops in my head when I see something. I've always been that way. And I got a Frank Miller vibe right off the bat from this. And I love this. Behold the behemoth lettering down here on the road. This is also a throwback to older comic books. I just love that, how they put it into the landscape. And I just got I immediately got a Frank Miller vibe. And I'm not saying that this artwork looks like Frank Miller. That's not what I'm trying to get at. There's a little bit of a Paul Smith, visual in this as well, that I kind of noticed. But this just has that feel, that older feel of like the way Frank Miller would set up a page, like panels and everything like that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is trying to copy Frank Miller or whatever, but it's got a Frank Miller vibe to it, just a little bit. And right there, that's a plus for me. So, but this character, King Cryptid, is based out of New Hampshire, and it's a cryptozoological type of theme to the entire book, which I don't even know if I just made up a word there. Not cryptozoology or whatever, but they call them cryptids. But it's based out of New Hampshire, and I like that. It was kind of different. I also, going through this book, not this issue necessarily, but I got a little. See, this looks to me like a Frank Miller. This looks to me like a Frank Miller page. It's just, some people might think I'm crazy, but that right there just kind of looks like it's laid out like a Frank Miller page. I'm digging it. But the character in itself is he's like nature based. His powers is based on like the phases of the moon, and he's got this moonstone up here. And looking at the character, you'd think, how is he going to write this character? That was the first thing that kind of popped into my head. Like, is this character going to be, is he going to be talking in sentence fragments like the Hulk or anything? But I really love. I'm going to go to this is issue 1. Let me go to issue 3. I really love the way this guy writes his character. Here's issue 3. I purposely skipped issue 2, and there's a reason for that. I'm going to get into issue 2 a little bit. And I hope I don't spoil much. I'm not trying to spoil anything. I'm just kind of looking through. But he's trying different things as well. He's got a different artist. He's got Alex Jovic. I hope I'm Jovic or whatever. And he's kind of switched gears a little bit. This is one thing I wanted to talk about. The advertisements in this book is straight throwback to the 80s, early 80s comic books, and I love it. This like Dungeons and Dragons, I think there used to be an old Dungeons and Dragons advertisements in early 80s Marvel comic books, and I used to love them. And kind of advertising that the game, the game wasn't super popular at the time, but it was kind of cool for seeing those ads. And they would go through like a little page of a story, kind of with the ranger and a magic user and everything like that. So this is a throwback to that ad trying to advertise this comic book. Onderdonk or whatever. I don't know I'm not sure what that is. And Onderdonk Adventure, OnderdonkComics.com. But I love the ads, fantasy adventure book, but they purposely tried to make this look like the Dungeons and Dragons advertisements in the comic books from the early 80s. If you don't know what I'm talking about, try to look it up online or something. But I used to love those ads. But a lot of the ads, and he's gone with like a cartoony style here with these young kind of Goonies like characters in here. And I didn't think I was going to like that at first, but I really dug the issue. And then he's got all these ads look old school. They look from all these ads look like all they're missing is like Count Dante, Deadliest Man Alive, and the Charles Atlas kick sand in the guy's face, and then he comes back as a bodybuilder and beats him up and all that stuff. But all of this has such a 80s throwback. It's really, there's a lot of charm to this. Now this is more 90s looking, 90s style looking comic book there, but advertisement. There's a lot of advertisements for like independent books in these. We Are Remnant. But just going through here, but yeah, that factor of these books was not missed on me, that they're purposely see, look at this. Hey, I'll turn this reader reward exclusives are fit for a king. I mean, this is straight out of Marvel in the 70s. I love it. Or they'd have a character like talking to the audience in the ad, talking to the reader, like the Hulk might be pointing or something like that. He's even got the little cutout things. I mean, I just love it. I just love this stuff, man. I mean, come on. I mean, it's brilliant. It's got all the charm of the 70s and 80s. I'll be going, I'll be talking about that endlessly. But let me go here to issue number 4 here. In the belly of Brugge. This cover, and as you can see, they've got, I forgot the flip cover for 3. They've got a nice monster on the mountain. I mean, it's just awesome. I love it. I love the I love the old style boxes up here that have the characters that he shows, and I like the way he's taking some chances. He's mixing things up. I'm going to talk more about the King Cryptid character when I get to issue 2, because that one really focuses on the character. This one does. Does as well. This is Pencils and Inks by Keir Covington. So he's doing a different artist every issue. And look at this. I love this. I love both of these covers, man. But this creature is kind of a throwback to Marvel's earlier, maybe late 60s, earlier 70s type monster creatures that they would this is something like, this definitely sounds like something Stan Lee would come up with, from the earlier days of Marvel, in the belly of Brugge or something like that. He was always coming up with these crazy sounding, monstrosities of characters. But it was weird. My first impression when I was reading through this one, I got such an Alpha Flight vibe. This is Paul Smith. I mean, this reminds me of Paul Smith right here. This panel. I mean, it just jumped right out at me. That the way that face was drawn. For those that don't know, Paul Smith was X-Men. He took over after Dave Cockrum had returned to the X-Men in the mid '80s, and he had a short run on the X-Men, but man, the fans were digging it. And Paul Smith was kind of slumming it a little bit in comic books. He was more like he went on to like do animation. He had done animation previously, I believe, like animation cells and stuff like that for some pretty high production animation projects. I think like that Fire and Ice. I could be wrong about that. I might be mistaken. I better not say too much about that, because I might be thinking of somebody else. But pretty sure Paul Smith got into doing like Hollywood storyboarding and stuff like that. But he was beloved by the short run that he had on the X-Men. I mean, he made the pain of John Byrne leaving the X-Men. He kind of lessened that pain a little bit. Dave Cockrum came on, and he was also a fan favorite. But man, Paul Smith really did some good stuff in the mid '80s on the X-Men, right before it kind of took a downturn a little bit. In my opinion, John Romita Jr. took over. But I mean, look at this. This is just who is this artist again? Keir Covington. I mean, I just like it. I like this art style. And this King Cryptid guy, this character, he's, like I said earlier, his powers is based on the phases of the moon, and he's got this moonstone. He can basically, he's kind of the guardian of like New Hampshire's wilderness. He's kind of the guardian of that. Like, he keeps everything in balance and everything like that. It's really cool. I like it. But the way he writes this guy, he writes the character like a normal person, and I love it. Like, you can, like, he does a lot of inner dialogue with the character, and that is something that is sorely missing in comic books nowadays. Is they have lost the art of the thought bubble and the inner dialogue of character creation in comic books. It drives me nuts when I read these new modern comic books, and they want to tell you how great these characters are. But the best way to learn about a character is actually through the thoughts of the character. Chris Claremont was a master at that. Like, fans dug it. Jim Shooter was a master of that. You learn way more about the character from the actual inner thoughts of the character than anyone, like any writer, can just like write something describing the character or something like that. No, I want to know what the inner thoughts of the character is during all the battles in the I mean, look at this awesome splash page with this throwback looking this creature. I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to spoil too much there. I'm not spoiling any of the story or anything. It's a great read. I'm telling you, he's really captured the mental and the vibe of the late 70s, 80s comic books. But I also got these little trading cards. It came with these 3 little trading cards as well. different artists, and it's kind of like a little mini comic book cover that was the flip cover of issue 3, Monster in the Mountain. That's kind of cool. And then this was cool. Get this, you get this kind of promo page with some like thumbnail looking art. It just kind of approximately 7 feet tall and 400 pounds. Creature spotted in the White Mountains. But yeah, it's kind of a throwback to the days when and I was growing up in the 70s. Late 70s, the big craze was, besides Evel Knievel, which kind of died down in the late 70s a little bit, but the big craze was the Loch Ness Monster stuff. You saw, Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot and all that stuff. Look at this. You get this poster here. You get this awesome poster that I'm going to talk about this artist here. This is the book. This is the issue that blew me away. This is the issue that got me. This is a black and white issue. Now, there is one problem with this issue. I'll show. This is just awesome double cover. I love this guy's artwork. This is the one that really got me. Like, if I had to pick, and I'm hoping they have a colored version of this issue. I don't know why it's just black and white. It's like, I want a colored version. Throw me in a colored version of this. But I just love this. This is just throwback looking cover. But I got a lot of impressions off of this issue. Yeah, and this issue just like sold. I'm following this. This issue is well written. It's basically all from the thoughts. The majority of this entire issue number 2 is all the thoughts, inner dialogue, and learning about this King Cryptid character. And right here you see he's trying to heal this wolf. He's, in tune to the nature. Words and letters, Peter Samedi. Artwork by Nick Hunter. I have no idea. He's the guy that did this poster. I don't know. I've never heard of this guy. I don't know why he isn't a big deal. Maybe he is a big deal and I just don't know about it. You know what I mean? This guy, this Nick Hunter guy, oh my God, his art is phenomenal. His art is absolutely, this blew me away. I was like, what am I looking at? Now I'm biased because I'm a huge John Byrne fan. John Byrne, anybody that knows me knows that John Byrne is the comic book artist that I gravitate to. I love basically anything the guy touches. Depending on the inker, some of it's better depending on the inker as well. I'm not sure who does the finish, if he's inking himself, but on this. But wow, man, this inking is this is like John Byrne, Terry Austin stuff. I think he's trying to do his best to replicate. This is like Joseph Rubinstein. Now, this is the problem. Bob Wyacek. In fact, this is reminiscent of some fabulous inking work. I want to see more of this. I get a hint of his rough pencils right here. This is the same artist, like his roughing of like storyboarding the panel. I like that, stone or bone. They're trying to make a decision on what to make his crown out of. Is his crown going to be made of stone or is it going to actually be made of bone? I like that. I like seeing little details of the decision making of these comic books. You can learn a lot from that. But yeah, I've been poring over these comics. Now, unfortunately, I got an ink explosion, it looks like, on several pages. At first, I thought this was intended. At first, I thought this was intentional. I'm like, what's the effect here? Like this bloody battle or something that he's about ready to have? But no, unfortunately, I think I got an inker. I think I got a printing accident, which if it was going to happen, I'm glad it happened to the black and white comic. Eventually, I'm hoping he puts out a colored comic. So it is unfortunate that that happened. There's a couple of pages toward the back as well, but I just wanted to showcase some of this. This story is fabulous, by the way, but I'm really turned on by the artwork. The way Peter Simeti writes this character is also reminiscent of how Chris Claremont. I mean, look at this. This is John Byrne. Look at this torso. Tell me that does not look. That is inspired by John Byrne. All these faces, just the figure work. I mean, look at this. Go look at some 1977 Marvel team ups where Spider-Man and Miss Marvel are battling the Super Skrull, and tell me that doesn't, like, of course he's got a different shape of the head as the Super Skrull, but that same visual style, that torso that's John Byrne inspired torso. I mean, this picture is inspired by John Byrne. I'd like to know Nick Hunter's thoughts on that kind of critique or whatever you want to. I mean, I see John Byrne. I see some John Byrne inspiration there. There's no doubt. Now it differs, it differs a little bit. This right here. I mean, that doesn't look like John Byrne. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm seeing things through some sort of rose-colored lens. I don't think I am. I think I'm spot on that. I mean, look at this. Now, this is a granite creature, big granite monster. Of course, New Hampshire is the granite state, I believe. I could be wrong about that. But yeah, I don't want to spoil another John. I mean, this is just reminiscent of the John Byrne inspired artwork, 100%. But the battle, I'm not going to spoil all of it. Now, this is more of a George Perez looking panel right here with this side, and you get to learn a little about this granite monster. Artwork is just blowing me away. I want this guy for my comic book. I mean, what's his rate? I might have to take out a loan. But once again, we get into I don't want to spoil the book. Maybe I've shown too much. I don't know. But look at this. I love this ad. This ad just like popped out at me when I first saw it. And it's just all the way down to the lettering. You know what I mean? So that's King Cryptid. Peter Simeti, Alterna Comics. I had never heard of him. But yeah, I'm basically going to be collecting King Cryptid from now on. Hopefully it's now I don't know about any of the other comics from his label. I know he's the kind of the owner creator of that label and the owner creator of this character, but I didn't touch upon how much like the writing style as much as I should have, but just get it. I mean, he's not overly charging for these books. I just love him. I mean, especially issue 2, just such a throwback with the inner dialogue going on during the battle, during the conflict. I mean, look at this. You just got to read it, and you learn so much about the characters through that. Really cool. All right, so that's King Cryptid. I'll be putting these in my. I don't like the cheapy bags that they send. Like, I have my own high quality bags and boards. I'm glad they put them in there, but these all came in like one plastic comic book bag. But I have higher quality. I make sure I buy higher quality bags and boards for my comic books. Another one I wanted to look at here is by a independent comic book creator named Isaac Bell, who I recently discovered a few months ago, thanks to a guy that's got a small YouTube channel who's an artist named Robert Norton. I ran across his. Now this is modern comic book style, of course, but once again, I'm gonna move this. Like I said, I don't in a comic books, but yeah, this is Isaac Bell and Alexa Lowe is the inker, and I think she does the coloring as well. But I wanted to showcase a little of this. This is also awesome stuff. But this has much more of a throwback. This is much more like an anime um, mixed with more of a 90s style. You can tell that he is very inspired. I mean, he even says, because I follow him on social media, he says that he's very influenced, obviously, by 90s type. He's got a modern twist to it, like a 90s type comic book, Mark Silvestri or something. I don't want to put words in the guy's mouth, but something of that line. But I mean, look at this. I mean, this guy is ultra talented, man. And it also the coloring and all of this. I actually I love this. Don't get me wrong. He's got a new Kickstarter. He's doing about one of his characters named Shrine. But these are like all occult. Can I find Shrine? I don't see Shrine in here. I hope there's not too much reflection, but I love the way he's got the characters coming. This is like 90s style. This is like a Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld type style of, he says, bam, there's your characters on the big splash page. I'm spitting all over my comic books. God dang it. When I do crap like that. But yeah, I love how it has the name of the character, and he's got a little description of like what the character does, and they're all coming at you. I mean, this is, come on now. Got Twitcher, Rag Priest. I don't know what that is. He's like a human voodoo doll or something. Really creative stuff here. I mean, it's dystopian future meets 90s image comic style a little bit, over the top. Just this is by the way, this is issue 0. I said, I'm going to start with issue 0. Instead of and he had already come out with, I guess this is his big popular character on the male side, but this is Shrine, I think. This is the character. She's like a possessed doll. He's making her own comic book series, like a spinoff of this already. And this is the only issue I have. I'm going to have to get like issue. I think he might have issues 1 through 5. I'm not, or 0 through 5 or whatever. I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, this is the only one I have. Might be a little while before I get the others, but I'm definitely going to. And I'm not sure if I'm going to like get the spinoff of the character because I don't know enough about the core group yet. I'm definitely going to invest more into the other issues of Metal Shade. I love this here. I mean, look at this. This logo, like, I mean, there's some money. He put some money into this. Definitely. You know what I mean? The Crypter. Yeah. That's his like breakout main character. But I mean, the color, I think Alexa Lowe, I think that's his fiance or maybe it's his wife. I don't know, but they're like a team. But man, there's Shrine. Yeah, there's the character that, oh my God, look at this. I mean, and I'm not a fan. I much prefer the older style 70s, 80s type comic books. But if I were to start following a modern independent comic book creator that's outside of that type of, outside of that vibe, this is the guy, because this guy's ultra talented, man. I mean, look, this has got some Spawn vibes to it, but I loved it. I mean, I loved it. I read through it. I'm going to pour through it some more, just like I am the King Cryptid stuff. But look at the design of this character. Tell me that's not badass. Oh man, I mean, he's got a Cyclops, visor look there a little bit, but man, it's all distressed and This guy, what is this guy smoking? I mean, Riplock. Yeah, I mean, I hope I didn't spoil it. But that's Isaac Bell's Metal Shade. It's badass, man. Absolutely badass. Loved it, loved it, loved it. So yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised and have very little regrets of investing a little bit of money in these Kickstarter books, Encrypted and Metal Shade. Now, I got another one called Fall of Man. And it's kind of the big monsters, kaijus theme, and I can't get the damn thing open. Now, this one, and I don't want to sound negative or anything, because let's look at it before I say anything. I love the logo here with the city skyline and everything there. The monsters look awesome. Let me just put it this way. This is by Age Comics. Am I getting that right? Yeah, Age Comics. I guess it's a comic label. Like I said, I don't know. I just this was the only reason I knew about this was because of another artist that I follow on social media, kind of an independent artist that I have a comic book coming that I back called Kaijus and Cowboys. These are Cowboys and Kaijus or Kaijus and Cowboys. I can't remember. I think it's Kaijus and Cowboys. I was right. KC. Yeah, that's what they abbreviate as sometimes. Long time. Ooh, gloves, potentially expensive. No. I have, I've been putting on that, I mean, look at my wrist. I've been putting on that cream stuff today on me, the antifungal from the oil at work. And I got a little bit of it still on my fingers, and I just didn't want to I have a box of these latex gloves at home. So I was like, I just put them on, you know what I mean? So I don't get, I get these comic books not for value. I get them for inspiration and just enjoyment. The collecting part, I've never been like huge collecting for value. I collect to consume, you know. Yeah, it's just that's the reason why I did it. I put on some of that steroid stuff earlier today. It's just hopefully it's actually getting better. It doesn't look better, but it is getting better. It was worse on my back and legs, but this comic book is Fall of Man, #1. And I don't know I'm not familiar with any of these creators here. The overall story was pretty good. The thing I did not like about, and I like how they kind of, it's more of a simplified panel layout. They're not trying to like capture any vibe. Like King Cryptid was obviously trying to capture the vibe of 70s and early 80s comic books. I mean, that's a given. That's 100%. It's obvious. But this is just kind of more straight up. I mean, I love the look of the monsters. It's good quality. It's the newer quality. But this reminds me more of a modern comic book, like the design of the characters. And I just wasn't that interested in the characters. I am interested in the monsters. The monsters are like, oh, cool. I mean, that's like Pacific Rim stuff. You know what I mean? And that's the whole reason why I back this is because of the monster designs. But these characters, like this guy with the angel wing, these characters, I just could not get interested in the actual superheroes that battle them. That was the problem. I mean, I just they just were not interesting to me. They weren't interesting visually. The way they were written was just not interesting. I didn't learn anything about these characters. There's no inner dialogue of the characters. I mean, when I'm reading through that King Cryptid issue #2, and I'm actually reading that whole issue with the battle and the conflict that goes on between the main character and that granite monster, you learn a lot a lot about the King Cryptid character during that fight. His vulnerabilities, his insecurities, kind of the way he thinks tactically during the battles. That's the stuff that they're missing in comic books. They're too busy explaining stuff to you instead of you actually learning about the characters. It's like a lost art in comic books. It drives me absolutely up the wall. And Chris Claremont knew it. Lynn Wein knew it. Jim Shooter knew it. They knew how to formulate those characters. They knew how to get the audience, the readers, invested in those characters. And you don't do it by just laying everything out in boxes and like I'll give you an example. A comic book, like when a Marvel team up comic book, when Thor was fighting the living monolith. He's all bravado on the outside, but during the whole entire issue battle, Chris Claremont made sure to write his inner thoughts and focus on the inner thoughts of Thor when he was battling that monster more than the bravado that he was talking. And you learn kind of what his thought process, he would say something like some bravado during the battle, but in his head he was like, "Oh boy, I'm getting tired," or something. You actually are learning about his insecurities and his weaknesses that way. You learn way more about the character that way. So this comic book just did not interest me that much. Don't get me wrong; I'm not saying that it's poorly written. It's just not. It just didn't capture me. So I don't think I'm going to be following up on Fall of Man #2. Now I might give it a try, but to me this reminded me more of like a newer animated series that they might put on Amazon Prime or something, where this just, it's just didn't interest me. Now the monsters do. I love the monsters. The monsters are cool. I love this guy. I love looking at this guy. It draws you in. Who wouldn't like, look at this. Look at this creature coming here. But the characters were dull. It's like those new Godzilla movies. Yeah, no, 100% character development. The newer writers aren't good at it at all, man. Go read a Chris Claremont comic book and then come back and read a modern comic book. Now, I know it's not fair to, he's like the James Cameron of comic books, you know what I mean? But now, don't get me wrong, story and lettering by Paul Bird, and I'm not putting anyone down here. Pencils and ink by Ben Worrell. It's fine. It's just not interesting. It just wasn't interesting to me. My favorite part of the book was the cover. Cover was cool. It's like, oh, these guys remind me of the Champions a little bit from the 70s. You got Angel. This is an Angel-like character, and you've got this guy blasting fire at the creature, and this guy with electricity. But they just did not make these characters interesting to me. I don't know. But these characters, Metal Shade, are just just so creative, man. This is just so freaking creative. It's unbelievable. Look at the visual. The visuals alone, even if the writing was terrible, I would love to look at the visuals. They're just, it's, an occult-based super team straight out of the 90s, really creative stuff. So, but I bought the first issue of Fallen Man. I'm going to have to retape it. I'll put it away and maybe I'll revisit it. It just wasn't my thing. One more that I'm waiting on is a comic book called, I mentioned earlier, by Matthew Blair and Frankie Washington, Kaijus and Cowboys. And I'm pretty sure I know I'm going to be getting there. That's the reason why I signed up for it. It's a throwback to the it's a throwback to like Shogun Warriors type. You know, and he's got an interesting character called the Hunter Bot, and he's got a certain style. He's doing it in a certain stylized, little bit of a Japanese Toho Productions type thing you would have seen maybe from Marvel. Herb Trimpe, maybe Doug Minch, Herb Trimpe comic book from the late 70s, licensed material from Marvel. And I pretty much know what I'm getting there. And it's just kind of more of a simple, fun escapism book. I'm not looking at it to being anything like Metal Shade or King Cryptid. More like King Cryptid, because King Cryptid, I really, when I was reading through Peter Simeti's King Cryptid issues 1 through 4, I felt like I was in a time machine. That's the feeling I want. And you can call it nostalgia, but no, that's back when I got a great feeling when I read comic books. That's what I'm trying to get. Not really nostalgia. It is, but it's still, I want that certain feeling I get when I read a comic book. That certain vibe, escapism when I read a comic book. And that's what I get from Peter Simeti's King Cryptid. I can't recommend it enough. I mean, it's definitely Alterna Comics. I might check out more of their line, but look at this poster, that Nick Hunter guy. Woo, man. I wish I could get him to draw my comic book. Ah, man. After I went through this, I kind of got depressed a little bit, because I'm like, my comic book is never going to be, I'm going for that 70s, 80s, early 90s vibe in my comic book, for my comic book team. And, man, when I read this guy, I'm like, when I read this stuff, I'm like, oh boy, back to the drawing board. And where can I kidnap this Nick Hunter guy? Geez, man. I really like the details and well done black and white. Oh, I do too. Oh, you want to, anyway, I'm going to show, it's probably going to come up blank here. You want to see a badass black and white comic book? Oh man, oh man, oh man. Second here, I'm gonna find it. You talk about, oh man, I'm telling you, comic book when I was a kid. Have it. Please be the right thing. It is. I actually have it. Oh my god. Let me see if I can find the window to capture. I haven't done this in a while. There it is. Woo! You want to see badassery right here. Like, oh, that's not black and white. Oh, wait a second. This comic book has some big time significance as well. This is Star-Lord. This is the Peter Quill Star-Lord character. Before he was in Guardians of the Galaxy, before they transposed this character. This character actually, this is from 1976, maybe 77. This is Chris Claremont, John Byrne, and Terry Austin first time working together. Not John Byrne and Chris Claremont's first time working together when they had Terry Austin on board. Terry Austin, John Byrne is a game changer. Second launch, and they go through this whole thing. Here it is. No accident that the artist picked for Star-Lord is John Byrne. John's feel for science fiction has been well illustrated by his work on Space 1999 for Charlton Comics. Yeah, he started out like a sci-fi artist for comic books. I'd like to thank Chris Claremont, John Byrne, Terry Austin, Yeah, that's the Beatles of comic books. I mean, look at this. Chris Claremont, John Byrne. Inks by Terry Austin. This is the first time that Terry Austin inked John Byrne. That is 100% true. Pretty sure. I would say 100% true. Pretty sure. Yeah. As far as I know, this is the first time that John Byrne ever. Yeah, that's badass, dude. Look at this shit, man. Oops. Didn't mean to do that. No. How do I? There we go. I just wanted to take in the whole. I mean, look at this shit, man. God damn. I mean, the detail, I mean, look at this. I love the duotone. You know, Terry Austin doing the finishes on John Byrne is just, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, man. I mean, look at that shit, man. Like, I don't even care about the story. I can just look at the pictures. You know what I mean? The story's good too. But I've been poring over this recently, trying to gain inspiration. Because the comic book I'm trying to write has a little bit of this in it, like a little bit of this vibe in it. Basically, I'd like to copy it. No. But yeah, I'm just going to go. I'm not going to read it or anything. I mean, this is, I mean, John Byrne and Chris Claremont had already worked on Iron Fist and Marvel Team Up before this, but not with Terry Austin. And once Terry Austin came aboard and kind of got connected to John Byrne a little bit, what they wanted to do, John Byrne didn't want to take over the X-Men, Chris Claremont. John Byrne wanted to stay on Marvel Team Up and bring Terry Austin to Marvel Team Up. And he didn't think he was the right fit for X-Men. Of course, 100%, he was 100% wrong. He didn't think the fans would like his style of art, but he didn't take into account how much the fans love John Byrne, Terry Austin combination. Then you throw Chris Claremont's writing in, and then, but yeah, this is just awesome shit. I'm so glad that this is the iconic picture of Star-Lord that's so copied. This panel right here, like you'll see this cut out like in a Marvel comic book or a Marvel magazine where this was the main image that was used to advertise the book. And this is John Byrne pose right here. I mean, I can look at a panel, and if I see this kind of image, this is John Byrne. There's another interesting you can hide a lot with coloring. With black and white, you need to be good, fully understand. Yeah, so, like, oh yeah, 100%. Like John Byrne knew from Jack, like learned like the Jack Kirby style of what not to draw and when not to draw it. And the negative space is just as important as the as what you draw. But I mean, look at this, man. This shit is just God, I love this shit, dude. This is one issue. I remember reading this as a kid, and I was like, whoa, like this was head and tails better than anything I had been seeing. Yeah, once you read a John Byrne, Terry Austin drawn comic book, it was hard to go back to some of the. I mean, it's good to go. You know, George Perez was good. You know, with Pablo Marcus inks, but it was just very, very hard to like settle for less. I mean, look at this shit, man. Oh boy. But I get that. I get this vibe from King Cryptid. That Nick Hunter guy, that King Cryptid. And obviously I get that from the Metal Shade. I'd like to see the black and white Metal Shade as well. But yeah, dude is on to something. That Isaac Bell with Metal Shade. That dude is on to something. He just started his new crowdfunding for his spinoff of that Shrine character, I believe today, and he had it crowdfunded in 3 minutes. I'm like, yeah, Oh, yeah. These modern comic book companies, these modern comic book creators, they can't hold a candle to this talent, man. It's not even, I mean, look at this shit, man. You don't see, come on. You don't see this stuff. This has got Terry Austin's hand all in it, man. I mean, the dude is a freaking genius. They're all, everyone in the comic book industry has been trying to emulate Terry Austin's embellishments since the last 40 years. And there's been one guy that's been close, Scott Williamson, worked for Image Comics. But yeah, this is Terry Austin is the gold standard for this. I mean, John Byrne will say it. John Byrne even said, you may not be a John Byrne fan. You may be a John Byrne, Terry Austin fan. Because I can show you a picture of John Byrne's artwork with a different inker, and it's still good, but it's not like this. A different finisher, like I love Klaus Janson, but his embellishment style fits more with a Frank Miller than it does a John Byrne. I mean, look at this shit, man. I mean, good God almighty. I love this negative. I love this all black. I mean, and I just love the effects, like the dots. What you call it, a duotone or whatever you call that. I said I'm not. Yeah, the panel layouts are brilliant. Unbelievable, man. George Perez. I mean, it's George Perez and John Byrne had a rivalry going where they were trying to one up each other. So they were coming up with the most creative. I mean, this shit just flows, dude. Good God, man. And then you can get away with you can get away with big splashy panels like this. When you're being bombarded with like great detail, and then they know exactly when to like minimalize it to make like for great effect on a giant splashy panel. I mean, he's hitting all the notes. I mean, look at this shit, man. He's hitting all the notes, man. But yeah, I just thought I keep this comic book bookmarked, and I keep this, and anytime I'm like, because I've been writing my comic book and then rewriting it, and like going this, and whenever I like, oh God, I am no good and I can't get anywhere, I just kind of go back and look at some of this, and I'm like, man, if I could get 1/10 of this. Now, I'm not talking about drawing. No. I'm talking about like trying to set up panels and like the story and the dialogue to fit, to give like a real artist. I love this. That's Count Nefaria. He used the same in the Avengers 164, 165, 166. He uses the exact same model for Count Nefaria right here as he does this character. Like this, when I first looked at it, I was like, wait a second, that's Count Nefaria, but it's not. I mean, he just basically transposed this character for Count Nefaria. And yeah, this right here, this picture, he uses this picture of Count Nefaria's face almost exactly. This character, I don't even know this character's name. Count Nefaria, when he discovers that he's going to be aging at a rapid rate, he's got that same exact. He used almost that same exact. Or when he's, I mean, this right here. I'm like, hey, that's Count Nefaria. One of my favorite Marvel villains, by the way, drawn by John Byrne. Jim Shooter wrote that though. But yeah, this is really good. Really good stuff. That's the only issue of this that John Byrne did. The next issue is Carmine Infantino. Carmine Infantino does the following issue of the Star Lord. Well, I like this cover, kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, Carmine Infantino, the legendary Silver Age artist, and this is really great stuff too. But the figure Carmine Infantino did some of the original Star Wars later on, like around late 70s, early 80s of the original Star Wars Marvel Comics Star Wars licensed comic book. He did a run. He had a run of like, I want to say like 10 issues. He's best known for drawing the Flash, but it's just not near. This is good stuff. Don't get me wrong. I mean, this is Carmine Infantino at his very best. He doesn't do deadline work near this good. Like none of his regular stuff. And he's old by this time. You know, by the 80s, he's, you know, hell, he was the editor in chief of DC in the 70s, but he had been far past his prime. This is still awesome stuff, you know. But anyway, that's enough of that Star Lord. I'll look at some other. I'm not gonna be. It gets old. I just want to look at after looking at that King Cryptid and people and saying that, you know, how that issue 2 Nick Hunter's artwork reminded me of John Byrne. I said, you know what? Let's look at some John Byrne X-Men. Chris Claremont X-Men. Oops. Another great splash page. I love the lettering here on this. He's got the X-Men all piled in here when they still had the Beast and Banshee. This lettering here, Magneto Triumphant. This is early John Byrne X-Men stuff. He had only been doing the X-Men for, it's Chris Claremont, John Byrne, Terry Austin, of course. Jim Shooter was the editor. This is 1978. This might be early 79. I think it's early 79. But this is the start of the storyline that pretty much put the X-Men back on the map. This is the start of the storyline that I started reading. I was reading X-Men off the spinner rack. I was, I'm almost 10 years old at this point, but I had not bought X-Men comic books monthly. I was like, I was lucky to get my mom to buy me 4 or 5 comic books a month, and the X-Men just weren't on my radar. But once I started reading this off the spinner rack, and I was like, oh, that's John Byrne. That looks like the Iron Fist art. Yeah, I was like, okay. I didn't know who Terry Austin was. I mean, I knew he was the inker by the credits, but I didn't realize what I was looking at. But I mean, look at this. Look at this awesome. This is a side diagram of Magneto's volcano lair that he's going to be trapping the X-Men in. I mean, good God, look at that. Jack Kirby was good at drawing like machinery like this, but not the fine detail. This is like Star Trek detail, you know what I mean? Of sci-fi stuff that John Byrne can do. That's right in his wheelhouse. But like I'm saying, the inner dialogue of these characters during the conflict, during the actual battles, you don't get that in the modern comic books today. You get a bunch of horse shit. You get them making snarky comments out loud that come straight from the writer. Like, that's something the writer would say. But Chris Claremont's actually writing the inner monologue of like Cyclops, and he always focuses on Cyclops during the battle because he is the leader, and you get his tactical point of view during the battle. They don't do that shit now. It's just like draw pretty pictures and make snarky comments and complain about Reddit posts. You know, I've read some of these modern comic books. Ugh, it's depressing. The terrible writing. But yeah, you've got, and this is what that Peter Simeti guy does in the King Cryptid really well. He has locked down. He's read a lot of Chris Claremont stuff, and he's got that vibe. You don't see the thought bubbles. Exactly. It's a lost art in comic books. And I'm not saying you have to have thought bubbles everywhere in the thought bubble, but it's also the content. But you've got to have the thought bubbles in the to know what's going on. This is the best way to learn about these characters, even if it's something simple. Jim Shooter did that really well. You always got the sense of the insecurity of the character during the battle. He would have Wonder Man like, oh man, I don't want to die again, or during the battle, instead of just like what some writer thinks some audience will find clever. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to write for some young 14-year-old girl with attention deficit disorder that I'm going to have them just say something snarky, kick some toxic masculinity in the nuts or something. I mean, it's so terrible. I mean, it sounds stupid the way I'm putting it, but that's basically what you get. You actually learn like what he's trying, like when they're losing the battle, you'll get his thoughts on like, oh man, these tactics aren't working, or I can't believe we're not fighting as a cohesive unit or something. I mean, and he always would key off Cyclops to start that inner, the inner thoughts of that. To me, that was interesting as a kid. I loved to Jim Shooter was really good at doing that stuff too. I think I already mentioned that. And of course you've got the Magneto when he's winning, you fools, since my resurrection at the hands of Eric the Red, my powers have been at their peak. No force on earth can stand against me, the bravado. But when he starts losing the battle or somebody gets to him, you get that inner monologue from Magneto as well. Like later on, here he is, 5 down, 3 to go. And Banshee's like, that's the truth, boyo. And none of us are lightweights, The best way to learn about the character, the characters. Like you said, Phil, you just don't see those thought bubbles anymore. Like this right here. Like I said, the beginning of the battle where, Magneto is dominant, you don't get a lot of his inner thoughts because he doesn't have those insecurities right now. He's thrashing the X-Men, But later on, you get to see the evolution of the battle in a different issue where the X-Men are starting to wise up to like how to get to him. And then you start seeing Magneto go, oh no. It's like, oh boy. And then you start getting his, like right here, I'm being assaulted on a myriad of levels, physical and psychic, by powers that rival Xavier. And, it's Phoenix. And he's like, good Lord. And she's like, I'm doing it. I'm forcing Magneto back, beating him for the first time in his life. He actually looks scared. I mean, this is how you write comic books. Good God. You don't get any of this stuff in these new comic books, man. And here you have the famous scene of Wolverine. He's using his claws. They tried to, Bryan Singer tried to put that into the original X-Men original X-Men movie where they're inside the Statue of Liberty. It failed because I could reference this scene from the Claremont Byrne comic book, and I was sitting there going, yeah, I see what you're doing there. Yeah, it's all right, but it's not the effect, And Wolverine comes up behind him and slashes his cape and just missed him. But he ends up getting Phoenix. Magneto's fighting back. I need more power. See, Phoenix is still holding back at this time because she doesn't want the Phoenix Force to totally take her over. So right here, you see Wolverine like sweating, like, oh boy, the claws are back. So he ended up being able to sheath his claws right before he gets, before he knocks himself out. I won. I faced my deadliest foes and beat them all. Then you see this sadistic robotic nanny And then you get into some psychological shit, and showing this. He's got this nanny he's basically treating him like children. Like that's the psychological warfare aspect, where he's got them all bound where they can't even think. They're basically reduced to the level of like a 4-year-old here mentally, and he's got Cyclops' visor covered by this, and none of them can speak. They can't hold a coherent an eye for an eye X-Men. And he's gonna let me go to the next issue. That next issue's good. Let me look at this cover. Holocaust at the heart of the volcano when falls Magneto. Once again, a cover that actually depicts. See, look at this. Now on sale monthly. This was when X-Men were starting their sales steamroll in 1978. It's early 1978. X-Men hadn't been monthly; it had been bi-monthly. Now on sale, and they want to let you know. Now you can get 12 issues a year. Get this monthly, and this is the start of when X-Men started becoming the dominant comic book at Marvel. This is the beginning of that. This is like the ground floor. Got Claremont and Byrne, Terry Austin, same old awesome front splash page showdown of you can tell a John Byrne torso. He has that torso style where he does the rib cage and the lats and the abs. I mean, I can just look at it and tell. And I got that. Nick Hunter is trying to emulate that style. The King Cryptid. I keep going on about that guy. I just love his art. Here's Xavier. They think Xavier is dead during all this, but here's this sadistic robotic nanny that like brushing the Beast and feeding Wolverine. Naughty Wolverine, if you keep spitting up your food, you shall make Nanny very cross with you, and like feeding him baby food. Oh, don't cry, Poppet. Nanny didn't mean it. Nanny loves you, and all this, like treating them like they're prisoners, and you don't really get a sense of how long they are down here for, but it's been like a week already where they're captured like this. You don't get a full sense of how, but Storm, like the way they escape, because she's a master thief from her childhood growing up, and she's got lockpicks in her head dress here, the thing that whatever you call this, her headpiece here that keeps her hair restraint, and she gets it with her teeth, trying to pick out, but she drops it. She got distracted. And they have a little flashback here of her like getting trained by this guy in Kenya or wherever. Self-styled master thief of Cairo. Yeah. And she drops it and all that work, and she's sweating, and then she has the breakdown. She said, "This is how you write comic books." And like she has as a kid, I'm hanging on every single panel, reading this stuff. It's like, I gotta get this, off the spinner rack. Because the nanny, she learns the nanny's, she learns that robotic nanny's kind of routine. She can time it out, like when she's gonna. But the nanny puts on the headdress here and says that I'll be back and I'll fix it on more securely, and that'll be the end of that. So she knows she's under the gun here. She's under stress because she's got to hurry, because if that thing gets secured, she'll never get to those lockpicks again. She'll never be able to access the other lockpicks. She had multiple ones. So here's X-Men. So a little time passes here. You see Magneto up here in his control panel. And he's talking about how, he's pretty much full of himself here, of how he took off the X-Men but he's getting a sense that something's wrong. Like impossible. There are scores of alarm systems in the complex, all set to go off if those cursed mutants broke free. Sudden malfunction could have been caused by the X-Men. And this whole layer holds the volcano, the lava of the volcano back. So it's a dangerous place, you know. Danny rolling, and this upcoming battle is just badass. Nanny rolling full speed in a circle. So looks like the. Oh, Nanny, I thought I built you better than this. No lights, now a damaged robot. The X-Men are more resourceful than I gave them credit for. And now the X-Men have the upper hand. They get to jump on him, and they blast him from all sides. Nanny goes flying. The robotic Nanny goes flying. And now they're all psychically bound here by Jean Grey. So it's like they know each other's thoughts and what they're about ready to do in battle. So they didn't have that coordination going on in the first battle. Cyclops calls the shots. His orders instantly transmitted over the mind link to the X-Men. This is awesome, man. And you got Banshee blasting him from the back. This is when Banshee still had his powers. And Wolverine smokes him here with his claws. Animal. When the battle's done, you'll pay for this. Who says you're going to win? And he gets blasted by the Phoenix. So yeah, my personal shield is holding, but the force bolt's throwing me across the hangar into the control console. So he's damaged the control console. Now Cyclops told Storm to turn up the humidity around Magneto through the battle. So he's sweating to death, getting dehydrated. Somewhere he did that. Oh, here it is. Cyclops wants me to draw all the humidity out of the air around Magneto. So she's drawing all the humidity out. Basically, dehydrating his body during the battle. Then you have that classic Cyclops, John Byrne, you know, two powerhouses go together. He did that same panel like with Wonder Man fighting Count Nefaria in the Avengers run. That Avengers storyline written by Jim Shooter. He had that almost exact same image. John Byrne reuses the images a lot that fans like. He's smart. I mean, you know, and I love the texture around Cyclops' visor. I mean, how can you not like that? So yeah, they're working as a team now. He's got his helmet off. And right there, and he's sweating to death. And Colossus just smokes him. Bam. So yeah, Magneto's basically done. But the control console was damaged, so the lava's coming in. So they're like, "Whoops!" All the lava's coming in. The volcano's coming down on them. And there, Magneto, you see where Wolverine got to him, slashed his ass, and then he's made it. It's over. He thinks the X-Men are dead, but you see the Phoenix bird, you see the Phoenix effect, but it's only Beast and Jean Grey. And Jean Grey is like she's exhausted after expending that much energy, and the Beast. They think the other X-Men are dead. But it's to be continued. And I was like, oh, I can't wait for next month. Mom, you got to go to the grocery. I got to find out what happens. To be continued. I remember vividly reading this at the Ross's grocery store off the spinner rack. Like, oh, I can't wait. Didn't buy it, but the day the X-Men died. So they think that Jean Grey and Beast are dead. These X-Men do, and they make it home, and they think that the others are dead. So you go for months, the storyline going in real time. He's taking, yeah, really, like, oh boy, Cyclops and Wolverine are out of the picture. I'm gonna get on that. I mean, who's to blame him? Now, I mean, look at this. I love this desolation. They just don't do this in comic books anymore. They don't do this kind of effect with the title of the story, you know, the issue, and here's the great picture of Beast going through the Arctic, and he he's got to keep going and going, and they're almost dead, and they think the other X-Men are dead, and they don't even know if Xavier's alive at this point. Scott. Yeah, she wakes up and is like, Scott, she thinks the battle's still going on, or like she's got to, she doesn't know where she's at. Like she has to, like save Scott. And Jean, what are you doing? I asked for a starburst, not the 4th of July. Like, wake up, Jean. And then they get rescued by the helicopter. And then they end up making it. They end up making it back to civilization, back to New York and to the Xavier's mansion. But Cyclops or Colossus has been holding up the rocks around the volcano, like keeping them alive there. And you know they're about half dead. Their costumes are all torn up and everything, which is going to be fitting for the next story. And they appear out in the Savage Land. Yeah, they're like, X-Men, welcome to the Savage Land. It's like they were on the tip of Antarctica, and then going out the underground of the volcano on that side, they appear out into the Savage Land. So they went to the worst possible environment of a volcano to this plush jungle like Savage Land, but it's not so great because there's dinosaurs. And one great, and I love it. They're all torn up, and it's got Banshee, and here's the fastball special from Colossus and Wolverine. Slash. Oh, that's an awesome picture of Wolverine doing the double-fisted adamantium claw slash. But they think, of course they think, and there's Dr. Kyle Lycos, who ends up being Sauron and all that stuff. This is a throwback because they've encountered Sauron before in the Savage Land back in years ago. The younger basic team was in the Savage Land. I call them the vanilla, the first class X-Men or whatever you want. Here's Jean Grey. There's some interesting character stuff coming up though when they deal with Cyclops, like, and his thoughts about Jean Grey being dead at this point. It's like it's kind of weird. And here's that great visual of Storm and Banshee's like, whoa, the Storm. John Byrne knows how to draw Storm, in the Savage Land get up. And it's weird. Here's Cyclops like looking down at the reflection, and that's the reflection of his father, Corsair, the leader of the Starjammers, looking back at him like he's just he doesn't want to accept the fact. He really didn't want to accept the fact that like a space pirate is his father, but now he's starting to it's starting to slowly like dawn on him that it is the truth, and he sees like that reflection, and his mind's like playing tricks on him. I love this dialogue right here. I've been over the fight with Magneto 1,000 times. This is what I'm talking about with the inner dialogue of characters, that they do not do this stuff anymore. It's all horse shit. It's all snarky comments, and it's all, your pappy is just a space biker. He's the leader of the Starjammers. His pappy. Now, how am I going to tell the professor it'll break his heart? Trouble is, absolute terms, the X-Men did pretty well. So he's kind of like, yeah, they're evolving as a team. You read through this. But I was concerned, a little lonely in my way. I cared for Jean as much as you did. He's like, I mourned for Hank, but for Jean, there's nothing there. And she's like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Maybe you don't love her like you thought you did when you were younger, after the shuttle flight where she became Phoenix, after that, where they tried to do it in the movie. And it was crap. Nothing has changed between us, yet everything had. She wasn't the girl I loved anymore. So he's kind of questioning his love for Jean Grey here because he doesn't feel anything. He might be numb or whatever, but he feels more for the Beast, Hank McCoy. But and she's kind of like disgusted a little bit at him and like walks away like, okay, whatever. You know, I was so harsh with Scott. You know, just little things like this, little dialogue thought bubbles like this that they just don't do in comic book. I feel more. Yeah, I'm getting a little. Yeah, I get a little feel for Storm as well. I was talking about this on Twitter to another comic book person like my age. We were kind of talking about this on Twitter the other day, reminiscing. I think I'm a little older than the guy, but I mean, yeah, I'm reading this as I'm what, 9, 10 years old when I'm reading this. Um, this made this image of Storm made an impression on me. I mean, I'm just like, oh yeah, I want to see more of this. You know, even as a 10-year-old kid, I was like, oh, I love John Byrne. I love John Byrne. But this is awesome. Right here, and then you see these hands here, and of course that's Kyle Lycos coming up behind, and he's trying to change back into Sauron. It's kind of like he's kind of like Morbius in that way. It's kind of like a thirst that he has to absorb mutant energy. He absorbs mutant energy to become Sauron, but he doesn't really want to do it. It's kind of like a schizophrenic type thing. Because he knows how terrible he is with when he's Sauron. I mean, look at this shit here. Woo! Oh man, Visions of Death. I remember this once again. Reading this off the fucking spinner rack, going, cannot wait. I cannot wait. Now the next issue I bought. Next issue I was like, Mom, here's the comic book I want. Can I get this one too? But he's like, okay. Yeah, that's badass. Oh man. Just don't see that. I mean now this one I got off spinner rack, Inner Sauron. Yep. Once again, they're depicting, and I'm like, oh, the X-Men are battling each other. What the hell's going on? Make it a post. Oh, I'm sure. I think I mean, it's a famous image. Back to the coffee shop for you. Yeah, I love this. This is typical. This is John Byrne. This is a iconic John Byrne pose of a character about ready to spring into action. And Sauron's grabbing Storm's hair, and I remember I read that previous issue in the spinner rack, and then I think I skipped a month, and I didn't, for some reason, be able to get to the grocery store. It'd been a long time, been like a couple months, and I finally saw this issue on the spinner rack. I finally made it back to the grocery store with my mom, and I got this, and I was like, I can't remember, and I didn't have the previous issue. I had just been able to read it at the, while my mom was grocery shopping, and I was like, what the hell happened? I couldn't, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, geez, what happened? And I ended up getting the back issue of that previous comic book like a year later. It'd been a while. I ended up getting all of these, but yeah, this is so badass. He's like, Wolverine, no. Now here's this is the most reprinted panel of all of this stuff, of all of this little mini story arc right here. This is the most reprinted. You see this image of Wolverine on t-shirts. You see this. You see this image of Wolverine everywhere. They've done caricatures of this image. The company I used to work for, Whirlpool, they had like a company outing where they were doing like some sort of like 5K run thing, and they called it the Wolverine or something, and they stole the image of Wolverine and made it a caricature of this and put it on a t-shirt, and people around the shop were like wearing the t-shirt. And I was like, does Marvel know that you just infringed their copyright on Wolverine? And what are you talking about? And they used this image, but they used a cartoony somebody had cartoon, made a caricature of that image. I'm like, you guys are stupid. But yeah, this is badass. The only place you're gonna rule is in hell. And then he's like, whoa, he's dodging. You're crazy. You're doing exactly what Sauron wants for you to stop. See, Cyclops has battled Sauron before. These guys have not. These guys are not familiar with Sauron. None of these characters are. But Cyclops has battled him before. He knows what Sauron's about ready to do. He's about ready to grab him and hypnotize him, put him under the spell. And then this was so cool. I was like, oh, geez. He turns his head and he sees these demons now. We're a trio of walking nightmares. So that's what Cyclops was alluding to. Like, no, don't go, because he's gonna turn you. He's gonna do a Marvel Midnight Suns on you. Cyclops, Nightcrawler, look at his face. What's happened? He goes, blast. Why could Wolverine have listened just for once? Power and natural ferocity could cut us all to pieces. Long before Sauron's hypnotic control wears off, unless I stop him first. And he's like, whap. That was so cool. I was like, oh, the X-Men are battling. Are you mad, man? He goes, trust me, I had to, you dumbass Irishman. Oh. Get airborne and don't let him make eye contact with you. Wasting your time, fools. And he does this little sonic scream. There's Wolverine face down in the water. Make sure Wolverine and Storm are okay. Wolverine's still under the hypnotic control. And he sees slime monsters trying to scrag Jeannie. And Wolverine's in love with Jean Grey. You're starting to get a sense of it reading the comic books. They don't allude to it quite yet, but it's a little deeper than whatever. No, something's wrong. I'm talking like Jeannie's alive, but she ain't. Yeah, Wolverine's starting to come to his senses, and then bam! I love that. He hits him with the optic blast across the badass, and then they hit him with the 1-2 punch here. Sauron is like, oh, I'm getting my butt kicked. Lycos, the sniveling weakling, he doesn't want to change back, but then he sees Colossus picking up. Now, this is one of my favorite panels in comic books, man. This next panel, Colossus change. He's like, Colossus change, and it changes into his armored form. Like, too much energy for Sauron to absorb. He's about ready, and he changes back here, and Wolverine's just about ready to shish kebab him. And then you've got, this is another iconic, this has been used for Khazar and Sabu. This has been reprinted many times, this image here. Could you imagine if the royalty program was put into place at Marvel at the time, like it was in the mid 80s, they started doing the royalty program, and then in the 90s, and these comic book creators started making hundreds of thousands of dollars per issues off the freaking royalties and the licensing of the merchandising, and they got a piece of that. You imagine John Byrne, how much he lost out on not having those kind of deals of the shit that they've reprinted of him. I mean, that one image, just Wolverine alone, for Christ's sake. So right here, they're all gathering around. Like, Cyclops knows Khazar. These other characters do not know Khazar. Wolverine's wanting to pick a fight. He goes, Khazar, Lord of the Savage Land. But since he's your buddy, I'll be glad to take you and your pussycat too. I love the way they write Wolverine here. Hold it, Khazar, it's me, Cyclops. I remember you. So now he's detailing like what happened with the X-Men. The old X-Men know Sauron, but the newer ones don't. And the new ones don't know Khazar as well. So they're all getting to be buddy buddy here. But they still don't like Carl Lycos. They don't trust him. And then they introduce here, they see a guy that's being used for a human. This is Zaladane, Priestess Zaladane, like the high priestess of Garrock, the petrified man, like kind of the evil god that they're trying to resurrect. And then they have Kirk Marston here, who they use him for a human sacrifice, and then they put the ancient fires on his chest and becomes like the embodiment of the spirit of Garrock. Boom, boom, boom. The X-Men are like, this is a great sequence here. Dialogue. With your help, X-Men, we can succeed. And Wolverine's itching for a fight. That Khazar pose is great. Yeah, I mean, yeah, John Byrne does Khazar. There's that John Byrne torso again that I was comparing Nick Hunter's King Cryptid. You can see the way John Byrne does the torso. But this is awesome. I remember this. This stuck with me as a kid, this dialogue. He's like, fine by me, Blondie. Sounds like my kind of fracas. Like Wolverine's down for the fight. He's like, yeah, I've been itching for action. And Banshee likes to fight too. So he's like, my sentiments exactly. And Cyclops goes, no. You see a no right here off the side panel. And that keeps like the tension alive for the next page. You know what I mean? He doesn't just have like Cyclops there going, no, 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 no. He's like, just a simple no. What do you mean no? I love that. And the claws come out. I mean, much as we'd like to help Khazar, we can't. Oh, what did it take, boss man? Blondie down on his knees begging. And the other X-Men are kind of like, they don't know who to side with. It's always that dynamic of Wolverine challenging his authority, Cyclops' authority. Our first duty is to the professor. They got to get home. And he's like, I understand. You got to go. When we get things worked out, we'll be back. And he's like, that's a laugh. Anyway, you cut this, we're bugging out again. And I'm getting sick of it. Wolverine's like, I'm getting sick of always ditching. But right now they're like, yeah, we'll see. We'll hold it. He's like, we'll hold off. We'll hold out against Garrock. Saladane's warriors, we'll hide from them, until you can return and all that. But then all of a sudden, it's winter time in the Savage Land. They're like, oh, it's just snow, a snowfall, and they're like, what's the big deal? It's not the first. He's like, no, you don't understand. This doesn't happen in the Savage Land. This means Garrock is been resurrected, and he's he's screwing up the balance of the Savage Land, the natural order of the Savage Land. Only a snowstorm, Khazar. They happen all the time. Not here, they don't. Somehow the sun god has upset the ecological balance. Yep. This is not a snowstorm. It's for the Savage Land. It is death. And then the famous issue to save the Savage Land. One of my all-time favorites. I say that a lot. I know. I love them all. Death to those who violate the laws of the sun god. Look at this. To save the Savage Land on the side stuff anymore, man. Like Chris Claremont, John Byrne, and like they can't leave now because the port that they're going to use, the waterway that they're going to use to get back, they don't have their jet. I mean, Storm and Banshee can fly. They can't carry Nightcrawler and Wolverine, Colossus, and they can't fly like super long distances. Banshee can't fly a long distance because his flight is based on his sonic scream, which he can't keep up. He can't keep up he can only fly like short little bursts. And Storm can't carry everybody, so they're stuck. They can't, they can't get through the ice way. So they have no and there's the Citadel that was created by Garrock's return. A giant fortress. Behold, the friends, the city of the sun god. If the balance is not corrected soon, the winter will last forever. Wow. Yep, that's John Byrne from his early space. That's right in his wheelhouse from his early Space 1999 Charlton Comics. He did some early like Star Trek stuff. Yep. Call it the High Priestess Aladane set out to build a great eternal metropolis. The New Order would Lane. Oh, my cat's is outside my window, meowing to get in. I have 2 cats outside. Hold on, Rousey. Like Rousey. And but you're going to see a first in comic books here. X-Men. Come here, Zabu. You and me are going to have a word. See, they're going off to the thing, and Zabu wants to come, and Wolverine has kind of a rapport now with Zabu, and he's like, I know you want us to help, but you can't. You got to stick around. You got to stick around here, and because we're trying to sneak in, and you're as inconspicuous as a Mack truck. And he's like, were you really talking to that? Because that's some cat. He's got more smarts than most people I know. Wolverine, were you really talking with that tiger? Yup. Wolverine, truly there's more to you than meets the eye. At my size, babe, that ain't hard. So they end up sneaking in. They're trying to go by stealth, and there's a guard there. This is the first time in, believe it or not, in the comic books where you get a sense that Wolverine actually killed something. Like, he just straight up, like, and a Nightcrawler who's German goes, mein Gott, my God, did he just do that? Like, he just shish kebab this guy. And they don't show it because of the comics code, probably, but Chris Claremont said that this has more impact because it leaves it up to the imagination. How bad did he really and Storm's like, he's like the great cats on the veldt. Veldt is, I guess it's African plains or something. When he strikes, there is no mercy in him. And that was the first time. Rob Liefeld covered this in one of his podcast episodes as well. He covered this. He actually covered this entire issue. He like broke this issue down, which I didn't. I was right along with him because I've read this damn issue 100 times. I know this inside and out. But I knew this was like, whoa, Wolverine is something different. Superheroes normally don't kill. This is, you got to remember, this is 1978. This is pre Frank Miller, Daredevil, nobody's heard of Frank Miller at this time. Frank Miller wasn't doing anything like this. Batman was a joke. There was no Dark Knight Batman. He wasn't killing people. He might not save a guy that falls off a building or something, but like Two-Face or something falls off of a clock tower or something. I remember there was one where he goes, well, I don't have to save him or whatever. That was like from a 70s comic book, but it wasn't really him like doing the killing. Wolverine's just a killer. And that was the first time that was kind of referenced by Chris Claremont. Where, yeah, this guy is, look at this. He sticks his hand in it and he goes, snick. And, it's a dinosaur, but still, Rover here's got teeth like razor blades and claws to match, and he can heal, of course. So that's kind of cool. They sneak in here. And Garrock has captured Colossus, Khazar, Banshee's got the muzzle on Banshee and the blindfold on Cyclops. And they're heating up Colossus here for the sacrifice. If it weren't for these vibranium bonds, there you have a reference to vibranium. And fairly early reference to vibranium in Marvel Comics. It's been referenced before, but and they're kind of seeing how hot, like, they can heat up Colossus's body. He's right. My body is already glowing red hot. No pain yet, but will it come? I wonder. Will I melt? I love that. I love that dialogue. And then, he teleports in and takes off the thing and blasts the pillar. The Garrock's like, uh-oh, they're freeing themselves. The Garrock takes off running because he's drained. I mean, he had to bring that citadel to existence from like another dimension, so it zapped all his power. They explain all that. Chris Claremont goes to the level of why Garrock is running here. Spending too much energy building my metropolis. The effort has left me no stronger than a normal human. He's got to go. So Cyclops is chasing him here. Like, you don't get away that easy. But now he's feeding off the sun's energy. Mortal attacking me has sown the wind. So now you shall reap the whirlwind. They do this laser blast, the old comic book trope where, you have the two, Superman's done it with Doomsday and all this, where their two eye beams collide and it builds up a force. And then the ground gives way and there's like a chasm here. No, the dome, it's collapsing under us. Now here you get another sense of Storm. Got to remember, these new X-Men are new characters. They've only been around for 2 years at this point. Not Cyclops, of course, but now Banshee's been around longer. He was originally a villain, but Storm, Cyclops, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler. Those are the three new X-Men. Wolverine was around a little longer, about a year longer, but the Storm says, I'll rescue Garrock. I mean, it's still a life. Storm is compassionate, even like a villain, she's going to try to save his life, knowing that there's an ordinary person in there that's just like possessed by their demonic sun god. But you get a sense of her claustrophobia here. It's bothering her. Being hard to breathe, a life is in peril. That's what's important. All these inner thoughts that you just don't get. Remember, the new comic book characters are just all great. They're perfect. The strong women, they don't have flaws. They're perfect. They're like, don't question them. They always have they have a smile on their face and they're snarky when they're battling. It's so fucking pathetic. I mean, this is real character development. She's got real emotion. It's like a real, never mind. The Storm comes out and she lands. That's odd. Why is she landing so far away from us? I better see if she's all right. Leave her be, Irish. They models after Lizzo. They're perfect. They're the epitome of just wonderful. And why? Because the writer told you so. That's why. The writer told you how great they are. And boy, you better believe it. They're so virtuous. They sit around, latte bars and, condemn people that, condemn the trolls on social media and bitch about Reddit posts. Model themselves after Lizzo. Oh God. Yeah, Storm is just too feminine, stunning and brave. Exactly. No flaws. Why? They have that recent DC comic book where they have this new African American character, like a kind of like a Storm like character or whatever. And the whole issue is about the other members of the Justice League telling this character how great she is. Isn't she wonderful? Oh, look at her. Oh, there she is. She's so wonderful. I mean, it's I mean, I couldn't believe what I was reading. They had Black Adam, a member, a new member of the Justice, some kind of offshoot of the Justice League, whatever, like Blue Beetle, Black Adam. And they're just, don't you agree? Isn't she wonderful? Look at her over there. Oh, she's ideal. But I like this. Chris Claremont has her land over there, like to be alone with her thoughts and everything. And you can see the emotion. I mean, Claremont and Byrne. John Byrne said that they would spend hours on the phone. Like, he lived in Alberta, he lived up in Canada, and Chris Claremont lived in wherever Chris Claremont lived. I'm not sure, New York or California or wherever he was living at the time that they were doing all this. But they would run up he said they'd run up hundreds of dollars a phone bill talking about all this. They were working like what I want you to, and they butted heads a lot. And later on, a couple years down the road, they really butted heads more. But they were basically, people, when you're trying to get to an end goal, you butt heads. Talented people butt heads. They want the best for these, they want to make this stuff work. Obviously, it did work. But John Byrne said they would talk this stuff out for hours. Like, how this should be, how this character. John Byrne had a big hand in, like, the development of this. But I love this, where she's just over here. She doesn't have to have any words, She just she went down there and she got anxiety and let's give it to Kathleen Kennedy. The Force is feminine. The Force is female. Kathleen Kennedy. Could you imagine her writing this shit? Oh my God. I'd have a trash can beside of me throwing up. Now, this next issue is not drawn by John Byrne, strangely enough. And it's kind of this is kind of the X-Men leaving the Savage Land here, and they make amends here with Kyle Lycos. Like, you understand you got to stay there in exile because you can turn back to Sauron. He doesn't like his Sauron side. They're battling, kind of like the Hulk kind of deal. But they make this craft here, or they have this, the native Savage Land guys give them this, and then they come into this giant storm, and then it says Psywar, and then the next issue is more like kind of delves into the backstory of Charles Xavier, and it really is not one of my favorite issues. No, this is John Byrne. I'm thinking of, what am I thinking of? That might have been an earlier issue. Yeah, this is John Byrne, Terry Austin, but this is not one of my favorite issues. This is more like the X-Men. They end up in Japan after this. I know this. I was thinking of a different issue. I got screwed up. This is going back, and you've got Liliandra from the Imperial Guard, from the Shi'ar, or however you pronounce it, where they still think the X-Men are dead, and they're getting on with their lives, and she's got a little romance going with Xavier, and there's a lot of backstory here on, like, the origin of Charles Xavier and how he met how he met Storm when she was young, encountered the young Aurora Monroe, and had a psionic battle with this, which is cool. They kind of did this in the X-Men animated. They kind of had an adaptation of this issue a little bit in the X-Men animated show. They did the Sauron Savage Land too, but I was mistaken. This is John Byrne Terry. I was thinking there was an issue that they skipped, but I guess that was earlier. Maybe that was Dave Cockrum couldn't make the deadline, and then they had a fill-in artist. That's what it was. It wasn't this. So here we are, the Submergence of Japan. I got screwed up. You'd think I'd read all these before. Now, I had this issue in, like, beautiful condition when I was a kid. I had held on to this issue I wish I still had it. When I abandoned my comic book collection, I had this. This was one of my prize issues where it was perfect. It didn't have any dog ears or anything. It was like a 9.2 or something on it. Would have been a 9.2 on the scale. I had it on in the thick mylar. I ended up buying it as a back issue. I bought it off the spinner rack and I didn't keep it in good shape, but I ended up getting it as a back issue at the Bright's Book Exchange like years later in the early 80s. I think I paid like maybe like I don't know, $8-9 for it, which was a lot of money back then for a comic book in you know. I'm wanting to say that Terry Austin missed an issue. I'm getting my memory. I hate when my memory screws up. Guest inker Tom Orzowski, who is normally the letterer. Yeah, this is the issue. This is the issue that John Byrne doesn't draw. This is Rick Villamonte is the guest inker. Tom Orzowski is the guest is the letterer. He's always the letterer during this run. I got screwed up. John Byrne does the pencils, but Rick Villamonte does the inks. Yeah, I knew there was something where somebody missed an issue. Terry Austin misses an issue, and I think it's the only issue that Terry Austin misses during the run. I'll get my story straight eventually. My memory's going. It's bad. Great splash page, but you can see the difference in John Byrne's artwork from a different inker. It doesn't have Terry Austin's precise lines. There's much more like a cross-hatching effect here. And you can tell the difference. I don't know what this guy down here is doing. He's yelling at somebody. But this is where they come up in Japan and they encounter Sunfire. Look at Wolverine. That Wolverine face right there. That's not Terry Austin. That's not Terry Austin at all. You can tell the heavier, thicker lines, the not so precise lines of the inking style, the embellishing style makes a difference in John Byrne's artwork. It's still great, but to my eye that it's looked at this stuff so much, I can see a big difference. I mean, this is nice, but it's not Terry Austin. It is not Terry Austin. This looks much more like Klaus Janson if he was to ink John Byrne. I have an example of that too. I'm not going to bring it up. It's from an Avengers book where they fight the Absorbing Man, but you can see Klaus Janson's hand all over it, all over John Byrne's artwork. John Byrne had a lot of stuff on the plate. He was doing a lot of stuff, and I mean, he had to be stressed on deadlines a little bit. So this is an issue where they're behind schedule a little bit, and he's doing more rough pencils, and for some reason, Terry Austin's not there. I don't know why. He might be working on the following issue, or they got way behind and they had to get some help. I'm not familiar with Rick Villamonte. I don't know who that is. I mean, I can read the credits, but I remember somebody was missing in this run. I think it's the only issue where Terry Austin misses. I love this though. The Mandroids and the Moses Magnum. They end up encountering Moses Magnum, who's trying to basically destroy Japan. He's trying to blow up Japan. No, you got Sunfire, and then you have Freezing Rain, and it just shatters the armor. That's pretty cool. But yeah, and here's Moses. I mean, you can tell. Look at the inking. It's good, but it's not near Terry Austin's hand. 'Twas the night before Christmas. He's going to sink Japan. Moses Magnum. This is kind of, now this on the cover here, it says Eagle Award. I guess I think that's an award given to from the United Kingdom, where they were winning this award, where I think John Byrne had something to say about I don't care about awards like that. Maybe it was Chris Claremont. Somebody had some kind of. I remember seeing this as a kid, and I did not know what the Eagle Award was. Eagle Award, which was, I guess, prestigious at the time in comic books. I just wanted to see cool shit. We go. Terry Austin's back. Much more precise looking. It's hard to explain, but it's just much more. It's much more finely rendered. And look at it. You can tell the difference in Moses Magnum's face here than the previous issue. And look at this. I love the way they did Cyclops' visor. Especially when there isn't a light source. Maybe the light source is behind him a little bit. This is great. I love that. Had that kind of Cylon look, like Battlestar Galactica and shit. Oh, I like this too. I love that effect of Nightcrawler. Kathleen Kennedy. Comment's funny. Hard ass. Poor Kathleen Kennedy. Nah, she deserves everything. She deserves all the mockery she gets. Somebody said Kathleen Kennedy's work is some of the greatest ever. I'm like, exactly what work are you talking about? What exactly has Kathleen Kennedy ever created? Tell me one thing, Kathleen Kennedy. Tell me one successful, popular thing that Kathleen Kennedy has been come from the mind of Kathleen Kennedy. I'll wait. Name one. Back to the Future? No, she had a co-executive producer credit on that, I guess. That was Bob Zemeckis. Bob Zemeckis. Actual talent. Not Kathleen. Still waiting. Kathleen Kennedy. Talk about riding on the fucking shoulders of creative people. I love this. Moses Magnum smokes Colossus. Oh, she's responsible for the Force as female. Yeah, 100% on that. Fucking crap. Here they're battling. They're in Japan. This is that X-Men World Tour. I call it and Rob Liefeld refers to that the X-Men World Tour that made X-Men like the number one selling book. And here's where this is kind of a significant event here. This is where Banshee strains himself so much, like trying to save Japan, the island of Japan, from Moses Magnum, that he actually loses his powers. Like he strains his vocal cords so bad from his sonic scream that he's never been the same. He never, as far as I know, as far as the continuity from the Bronze Age, he never got his powers back. They made him more of like an agent. So yeah, here we go. Talking about how he almost died. Welcome back, Sean. Merry Christmas, Sean Cassidy. They named him. Sunfire, but yeah, this is Banshee. Coffee, go for. Yeah, that's basically what she is. Yeah, I mean, yeah, she's got credits on a lot of stuff. Oh, executive producer credits, but she's never. What exactly has she ever? Now they're in Scotland. This is after the Japan. Now they go to Muir Island, and they've got another Human, I need you. Oh my God. And I was like, what is this? And next issue, Wanted, Wolverine, Dead or Alive. And I'm like, what is this? Who is doing this? Human, I need you. I know, of course I know now, but they are in Scotland now. So they do that whole summer, that whole year of reading these off the spinner rack and getting these comic books, eventually getting, I come in like mid run of buying them monthly. Like they were doing this whole world tour thing. They were in Japan, they were in Scotland, they were in Antarctica, Savage Land. Like they were on the road. They were doing like a band would do a tour. Now here's 120. Now that's a cliffhanger. That is a cliffhanger. Now that it's chaos in Canada, and now you're being introduced. You're not being introduced to this character here. This character already appeared in X-Men comic book. Weapon Alpha is what they call him Vindicator now. Claremont, Byrne, Terry Austin, same old Jim Shooter. Roger Stern is the editor now on the book. The singular issue editor on the book. I recognize Weapon X, so they're definitely tracking. This is a Canadian behind, like the Canadian, the one you codename Wolverine. This is a Canadian government operation, and they are trying to retrieve. They think that Wolverine is their property. Like, we created him. Called the X-Men Prime Minister. That's the Prime Minister of Canada. That's not Justin Trudeau. He'd be there telling them how they're not diverse enough or some horse shit. They're an unofficial team of so-called superheroes. We also believe that, like Wolverine, they're all mutants. So you're basically getting introduced here. This is John Byrne's run at first run here of these. And Chris Claremont and John Byrne have created these characters. You're just now being introduced to what will be known as Alpha Flight. This is X-Men 120. So, Byrne draws I don't think John Byrne's a fan of the Prime Minister of Canada at the time, but here we have North Star. He's a professional Olympic skier. We've got Dr. Michael Two Youngman, who is shaman. You've got Snowbird, who she works for the government. She's a records officer assigned to Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. See, John Byrne knows Canada stuff. Corporal Anne McKenzie, who's Snowbird. She can transform into like an giant Arctic owl, and you can also transform into a literal Wolverine. And Dr. Walter Lankowski, who is basically became the fan favorite, the Sasquatch. He's a biophysic. They always make the most like bestial character. Not always, but it was kind of a trope to make the most bestial character like the biochemist, or like Hank McCoy and shit. Hank McCoy didn't start out that way in the X-Men. They ended up making him later on like the smartest dude. They made the scariest looking dude like the nicest guy, and Nightcrawler like the most compassionate guy, like the most down to earth character. And then they made Beast like the smartest guy. But they kind of did the same thing with Sasquatch, and that's Aurora. That's the twin of North Star. He's a teacher in Quebec. And they're leaving Japan here. And here is Mariko. This is Wolverine's love interest later on. Yep. See, Wolverine's giving her some kind of corset. I don't know what that is. Some kind of. And here we go. My name is Logan. That's the first time. This is significant. This is the first time that he says, my name is Logan. Like, this is the first time knowing. I'm like, Logan. Which really is kind of like a nickname thing. That's really, they ended up retconning that that's not his real name and all that stuff. But they just went by Logan. But that's the first time in a comic book you ever saw that. I think that was like Chris Claremont springing that on the readers. and he can speak getting late. He can speak Japanese. Readers didn't know that stuff either. They're waiting on their flight here, and something's wrong. Cyclops, the storm resists me. This is their pilot. They got some hottie as their pilot. And it's Alpha Flight doing a little stealth mission to try to get the jump on the X-Men because they want to kidnap Wolverine. Get out of this, bub. Wolverine, you know who this is. Yep. And you know why I'm here, basically. And it's like, stay out of this, bub. My fight. X-Men 109. Yep. And then Sasquatch is going to pick up the plane and toss it. And it tosses the plane backwards into the hangar. And you're just getting a little sneak. You're getting a little teaser because you haven't seen Sasquatch in his actual Sasquatch form. Sasquatch, you incredible lummox. I told you to stop that plane, not smash it. Sorry about that, Vindicator. I guess I still don't know my own strength. Now, they ended up changing his name to Guardian. I don't know if there was some sort of rights, some sort of copyright. I don't know the story of why they changed Vindicator to Guardian. I like Vindicator better than Guardian. I thought Vindicator was a badass name. I love that character, James McDonald. They ended up killing the character too. I'm like, come on, guys. And of course, his wife took up the mantle. I like Maple Leaf Man better. Maple Leaf Man. As a kid, I love Vindicator. And this is the first issue that I ever knew they called him Vindicator. I must have missed it the first time I'd seen the character before, but they called him Weapon Alpha. The shaman is conjured up this storm here. Oh, this is not my doing, Vindicator. So one of the X-Men must have powers over the elements that's combating his initial little spell. Maybe Todd McFarlane stole the name. You never know. This is way before that. But yeah, they end up changing the name in the early 80s when John Byrne took over Alpha Flight. They changed it from Vindicator to Guardian. I don't know the story about that. I might have to look up like the story of why they changed. I like that kind of stuff. Detail. I mean, some people are like, who gives a fuck? I do. I like to know the backstory of why they changed that. I always wonder why they changed that. And I always hated that. I bought every issue of Alpha Flight when it came out until John Byrne left after 2 years. But here they are trying to sneak out. They're trying to get out of Canada here. Vindicator sounds too unapologetic for a Canadian. That could be something to have to do with it. John Byrne might have not liked the name, and he convinced. I have no idea because he eventually had control over those characters. You know, he was assigned to that book. That was the number one selling Alpha Flight #1 when it came out. It was the number one selling comic book that year. Yeah, I mean, it was. I remember getting it. I remember checking it on my folder at Bryce Book Exchange. Like, oh, I can't wait. Alpha Flight. So right there, North Star Dex Nightcrawler. Aurora blinds him, and then they're kind of like a 1-2 punch. Then you have Banshee, who doesn't have his powers. It doesn't have the use of a sonic scream. That's why he's not. And I don't know why they made that certain writers have it in for certain characters. Jim Shooter had it in for Yellow Jacket. Hank Pym, he had it in for that character. And then later Roger Stern had it in for him, where it's like, okay, we're going to pick this character and we're just going to crucify this character. And, Hank Pym, they just piled on that character. They made him terrible, made him a wife beater, put him in jail. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, he couldn't resist. He goes, the Spalleen, I don't know it must be an Irish thing, who nearly murdered Maura McTaggart by accident in X-Men 109. Yeah, he attacked he fired a blast in X-Men 109 that bounced off Colossus and it hit Moira McTaggart in the head and almost killed her. And that's Banshee's love interest. So he's pissed off, but he can't do the sonic scream. What happened? He's doubling over, and he should have liquefied me with that sonic scream. But then Storm gets into the action here and smashes Vindicator out of the wall there. Perhaps Heather was right. I'm just not cut out for this kind of life. Heather is Heather McDonald, his wife, who ends up being Guardian later in Alpha Flight. She takes over. Got to have that lead female. Even John Byrne isn't immune to the changing strong female character. They like to shake things up, like that. I was against it, but they love to start killing characters off. And here, you still don't see they're still teasing Sasquatch's full form here. You see his arm, and which was kind of cool. I was like, now this next comic book is awesome, in my opinion. This is one of the best of the run, besides that one Savage Land. This one is the one that really blew me away when I was a kid, that I remember getting. And now we're in 1979, and I love this issue. This is the issue because the X-Men are on the hunt now. Got Claremont, Byrne, Terry Austin still. Got a new letterer here, and Lynn Weem's wife is the colorist. But they're shootout at the Stampede. This is the all-out battle here with Alpha Flight. This was the thing I was licking my chops over. I love these kind of battles in a enclosed area. So she puts her fog ability on, but they're using Wolverine. Alpha Flight's using Nightcrawler and Wolverine as bait, so they find them here by the White Wolf. What? And you finally see Alpha Flight in their full glory here as a unified team. First time, really. This is Alpha Flight, Canada's first team. This is your first time actually seeing them a unified team in their full outfits. This is Alpha Flight, Canada's first team of superheroes, culmination of a decade of intensive research and development. And they think they're equal of any supergroup on Earth. I don't know about that, but we've no quarrel with you, X-Men. You can take your blue-skinned friend and go. We'll guarantee you safe conduct into the States, but Wolverine stays. So this whole battle's over Wolverine. And they've put up they've put up some sort of force. The air itself has turned solid. Shaman did a spell. Shaman put out a spell that enclosed the they had to have a reason for them not to be able to get out of that rodeo ring or whatever they're battling in there, that stampede ring. So they had Shaman put up a barrier, a mystic barrier. You almost killed Moira McTaggart. They're referencing X-Men 109 again, Roger Stern. Those were accidents. You seem to have a lot of them. I love that. And Colossus notices, what's North Star doing? He's sneaking around. He's flanking. He's slowly moving around Cyclops because he's just distracting them here with the argument. He's moving behind Cyclops. And whether they're justified or not, we'll never know for an instance later. Beware, Cyclops. And he stomps the ground and he throws them all off. Your treachery. Buster, your steel skull's rusting. Sasquatch, no, I want no fight. He doesn't really want to fight the X-Men. A little late for that, Jimmy. Wolverine, you're awake. You got it, babe. Me and the elf were playing possum. I love it. And bamf, he teleports out and Wolverine's ripping off his clothes. And Aurora goes straight up to the sky. You start to see some of their powers here. He brings out these totems that come alive. Form on me, X-Men. We can't let them split us apart. Pick us off one at a time. I love that. I love Claremont always focused on Cyclops. Like you get his tactical thoughts during the fights and everything. Pretty handy with those eye beams, X-Man. The pity you can't shoot them everywhere is this is just an all-out battle issue, basically. Kind of led up. The last two issues kind of led up to this all-out battle. Cyclops is down. Guten Abend, Fraulein. We meet again. Ho, a teleporter. So she takes off flying. She can fly super speeds. And Snowbird can transform into a giant Arctic owl. She's a shape changer. And then Wolverine's battling shamans, totems here. And you see Cyclops, Colossus, and a Sasquatch battling here in the background. And then key is teamwork, Wolverine. We have it, you don't. That's got to hit. That statement's going to hit Cyclops hard. He hates that. Like, they're using teamwork, and we're not. And the X-Men, who pride themselves on teamwork, saying goes, it's the straw that breaks the camel's back. Well, the storm, shamans warped weather systems from here to the North Pole, creating a cyclonic blizzard. So he's getting the weather out of control, where even his mystic abilities can't control the spell. Cyclops. Colossus is battling. I loved Sasquatch. Flaming weather starting to match this fight. It stinks. Shaman's riding air currents away from my reach. Oops. I love that panel right there. Vindicator's blasting Wolverine. The weather's starting to get out of control, and then North Star's as fast as Quicksilver, almost impossible to hit. Especially with my head still ringing from that punch. Colossus, you don't win a fight with your fist alone. You've got a brain, man. Use it. And he does like a judo flip. So the X-Men are starting to get one up on him a little bit. Here's Cyclops. Here's Nightcrawler. Good God. And I love this. Instead of bashing her, he kisses her. And it pisses her off. I don't know. Doesn't want to be kissed by some kind of blue German demon, I guess. And here Wolverine's about ready to... I mean, Vindicator's got his battle suit has a force field built into it. But Shaman, what's happening? I don't know. I've lost control. Wolverine's he's got on top of him, about ready to slice and dice him. Thor's battling Snowbird. And she takes her cape off and uses her cape to catch. I should have thought this before. With the stretching capacity of the unstable molecules of my cape, Snowbird shouldn't be able to crawl free, and throws her on the ground there. I don't know if it knocked her out, but she's like, I don't have time for this. I gotta go try to get this weather under control. It's gonna cause damage. And another iconic John Byrne figure here. You see this same figure used in like the Jean Grey, the Phoenix saga of Phoenix, like summoning her Phoenix Force ability. That same. So she's drained because she's now got this weather under control, and she comes down, and then in punk ass North Star sucker punches her from behind. Beautiful picture of Storm there. I love this. I remember this kid, man. I love this panel. Cyclops is like Aurora in full blast. John Paul just smokes him. I was like, yes, because I hate North Star. I always hated that character. You lousy little. I love this. You lousy little. Storm risks her life to save your misbegotten country. I wonder how John Byrne felt about that dialogue, being a Canadian. you're going to lose some teeth. And then Wolverine's like, nope, this fight's over, man. And it's like, that's not like you. Normally, these roles are reversed. I mean, this is brilliant by Chris Claremont. He's reversing the roles here. He's acting like Cyclops would, reasonable, and Cyclops is out of control, wanting to bash this guy's teeth in like Wolverine would. And he's like, I told you first, because you're an X-Men, Wolverine. Your fight is ours. He goes, I appreciate that, boss. I don't want to see my friends chewed up on my account. You want me, Jimmy? I'm yours. You made the right decision. The X-Men go free. He goes, you have my word. I'd bettered, bub. The Wolverine just gives in and says, I'll go with him. No problem. But Wolverine's smarter. Wolverine's smarter than the situation. Like Wolverine's not an animal Cyclops. They don't need to treat him like that. And they put him in an armored car thinking that this cage was specifically designed for you, Shorty. You couldn't bust loose in a million years. Of course, you're so dumb, you'll probably try. Always had a big mouth, Garson. Keep flapping it around me, and your wife will be a widow before her time. I love that. So they think this can hold. They don't know the extent of Wolverine's abilities. They don't know They don't know. So the X-Men get a Canadian Air Force escort going back to New York. What's with the armored car? And they're taking a Banshee's. Like, what's going on here? And of course, the X-Men aren't going to take this lying down. They're like, I'm in. I am as well. Me too. Like, we're going to, once we're out of radar range of these jet fighters, we're going to turn right around, and we're going to turn around, and we're going to spring Wolverine, whether he likes it or not. Like, Annie, change course, head for the Rockies. As soon as it's feasible, drop below radar and head north for Canada. I always like this part. And the way they draw this panel, you can't really see Wolverine except for his arm. He goes, I wouldn't do that if I were you, bub. He goes, Wolverine, what are you doing here? What's it look like? I'm riding home in style and jawing with a pretty girl. Yep. The truck. There ain't been a cage built that can hold me. What about next time? He goes, I'm not going to worry about next time. That was awesome. Wolverine's like, yeah, they're thinking they could be able to hold me in an armored car. I'll be out of here. So he just broke out, and the Alpha Flight probably still don't even realize that he's gone yet. And it kind of leaves it where later on they can have a conflict, They don't want to just, you could go two routes with that story. You can have Wolverine. It makes the next issues predictable because they're not going to go without Wolverine, who is the breakout character. They're not going to have him in the clutches of Alpha Flight or Canadian government. And then predictable stories coming the next 3 or 4 issues of the X-Men going in and doing all that. So they leave it. Chris Claremont would leave it open. He'd always do that. Like, he always kept little threads of stories open. He never liked to fully tie up a thread of a story. Now, sometimes he'd have too much going on, but this is a way for the future. The Alpha Flight's like, Wolverine, it continues that, where the Canadian government gets involved, and that's what happens, later down the road. You have more, and then that's an excuse to delve in more to the origin of Wolverine and like behind of what made Wolverine what he is. They can go deeper into that instead of just the X-Men going and battling the Alpha Flight again and like breaking them out in the conflict, and then it's over. What timing to join? Hey, what's up, Volts? What timing to join? Join what? Oh, I'm just looking at old X-Men. Just looking at old X-Men comic books I read. I loved as a kid. Yo, the Trial of Colossus. Now, you're going to get back here. Claremont still, Byrne breakdowns, finished art, Terry Austin. And you can tell when John Byrne, during this, now at this point, John Byrne had already left Marvel Team Up. He was specifically doing X-Men, but I think he might have been doing some covers. But he was basically just X-Men. But he was known for keeping deadlines. Like, he was known for being a workhorse. So I'm not sure if there was any other thing. I know he did a small little run on Power Man Iron Fist around this time. But who knows when the artwork is done and when the book is actually released, at that time. So um, there'll be issues where you see John Byrne, you see more of Terry Austin's hand. Like, you can tell the issues where Terry Austin is more involved in the embellishment of the artwork, where John Byrne probably did a rougher first pass and then gave more and more to Terry Austin to finish up. You can see Terry Austin's, I love this. They're training in the danger room. They're finally back home. You haven't seen the X-Men. You haven't seen the full X-Men back home in a long time. It had been like, in real time, it had been like over a year since the X-Men had been back to the mansion and had any kind of danger room. As a kid, that's a long time, 12 issues or whatever it was, maybe even 13 issues. Oh, Power Man and Iron Fist 57, they reference here with the crazy fight with the living monolith again, who was in that Marvel team up with Thor and Spider-Man. The X-Men team up with Power Man and Iron Fist and fight him. Now on sale, Roger Stern. They have to cross promote some of their other books at the time. Now it's just ridiculous how it's so corporate. Everything's watered down, and now we're getting into this is the beginning of two storylines. The start a thread of two storylines coming. Kind of three storylines, actually. You've got Xavier still has a relationship going on with Lilandra of the Shi'ar Empire, and then you see this guy. I'm like, who in the heck is this guy? You got Jean Grey. She's just out shopping here. In Scotland, Jean Grey's in Scotland with the Beast, staying with Moira McTaggart, and at her like laboratory, and she runs into this character, which turns out to start the Hellfire Club storyline. This is actually Mastermind, but he's posing as Jason Wingard. And if you've seen the X-Men animated, they do a kind of they don't call them Hellfire Club, though. They call them the Inner Circle, because you can't say Hellfire to kids. Supposedly in the 90s, kids aren't mature enough to handle the words Hellfire, so we have to make the Inner Circle. That pissed me off. I was like, just go Hellfire Club. I'm sure the kids will survive. But this was a clever little thing that in the next, all throughout the run, you see his true form, kind of like Dracula, kind of like a Dracula type image where, he looks all suave and sophisticated, but then the reflection on the side is Mastermind's true form in the reflection, which is kind of a haggard looking homeless dude, basically, is what Mastermind looks like. Like something that would walk up and down Janzer Street, basically. On camera, I shouldn't say. So unprogressive of me. Can't believe it. But then that starts off, and that just got the readers thinking, what the heck is going on? But there was kind of like a mutual attraction. Looks too good to be one of Janzer's suspects. I've seen the dudes going up and down your street. Yeah. I'd have a I'd have an arsenal. I'm just saying. My little my little yeah, you're kind of doing a disservice to ghouls. I mean, I'm not total asshole. I have some compassion. My little concealed carry gun that I keep stashed underneath. I have a little stash spot underneath. I'd be upgrading. I would be upgrading that bad boy. I do have a better 9mm than this, but I have it stored away. I've got a Ruger, but I've never shot it. I would definitely be upgrading my arsenal a little bit. I'm just saying, chain link fence is nice, but I don't trust it. I don't trust it. Get a couple of those guys together. Yeah. What'd you think all the guns is for? I love that song. Oh God, I love that song. I'm not a gun nut either. I really am not. In that situation, here we go. Here's Chris Claremont's idea of like a homeless shelter type thing. Crazy. Oops. Or if I had that full, probably blow it up on the screen a little more. But anyway, I'm trying to see. I was trying to like read some of the graffiti looking things to see if I could get some kind of little Easter egg, and I found one. Joe Duffy. There's Marv, like little graffiti they have on the walls here of, and Junkie Joe. Joe Duffy that's Mary Jo Duffy. She's a writer, Marvel Comics. At this time, I think she ends up writing Power Man and Iron Fist for a little while. Great writer. She worked for Image Comics for a little bit later on, but she was one of the earlier Bronze Age like women comic book writers, along with like Louise Simonson and Noventi. But I can't really see. I don't have my. I like there's Bobby Wyacek. He's an inker. I don't know what High Society. Shogun. Shogun was a popular show at the time, like a mini series. I like to look at little things little Easter eggs. Here's Milgram. Milgram from referencing Al Milgram, who was the art editor at Marvel at the time. I can't really read a lot of this, but I'd like to blow this up and like look at that stuff. I like that kind of stuff. That little graffiti wall. They don't know what. That's Marv Wolfman there. Anyway, I care about shit like this. Speaking of Luke Cage, we have a Misty Knight Luke Cage sighting here. Luke Cage, Misty Knight. And here's the prologue. Here's another little story thread going on. That, and of course, is, if you don't know, is Arcade. The return of that character, Arcade. And of course, you've got Black Tom Cassidy and Juggernaut. So Chris Claremont's starting to juggle a lot of stuff. Yeah, there's Arcade. Arcade's the name, Murder's the game. Funfair is another name for murder. Got the cards of the X-Men here. The X-Men are as good as dead. Never really cared for that. Spider-Man's in the next issue here. That's heavy Terry Austin. This might be total Terry Austin artwork on this cover. I can just look at it. And yeah, Terry Austin right there. God damn it. Keeps coming up. This Marvel app. Yeah. this Marvel Unlimited app. The mobile version is awesome. Desktop version, it could use a little here, but yeah, you got Spider-Man, still Byrne and Austin, but you can I can tell when Terry Austin has a heavy hand in, but that was total Terry Austin. Great artist, better inker, but great artist. This issue really didn't make much of an impression on me when I was a kid. There's not really much going on. They're kind of using this as a midway to get the ball rolling for the Hellfire Club saga, and then of course, before they do that, though, it'll be Proteus from Scotland, which is Mara McTaggart's son. It ends up being they call him Mutant X, but his actual code name is like Proteus, and he about destroys the X-Men. He can warp reality. Yeah, this is where they brainwash. The next issue is where John Byrne, supposedly according to John Byrne, is where him and Chris Claremont started butting heads creatively. This next issue, it's got the Proletarian. It's got a Colossus on the cover as the Proletarian. He's strangling Storm and Cyclops on the cover, and they kind of delve a little in the backstory, like put some of the Russian roots into Colossus, because it's hard. Yeah, there's the cover right there. It's the iconic cover. You understand, Colossus, we're your friends. He was one of the X-Men. Now he's the power mad Proletarian. So, but all of this, and that's a Dave Cockrum cover. I can tell. Yeah, Dave Cockrum, Terry Austin. You can tell. I can tell Dave Cockrum just by the figure work here and the face of Storm here. Dave Cockrum is the brains behind these characters. I mean, he's the guy that created Colossus. He created Storm. He created Nightcrawler. I mean, he's the reason why, he was the genius behind the new X-Men. He's full credit. That was pre Chris Claremont, by the way. Lynn Wein was the writer. But all of this is really cool stuff. But all of this is just him being. You get more sense of Storm's claustrophobia here from Chris Claremont. He kind of slowly brings all of these vulnerabilities and weaknesses into the story of these characters. They're just using this battle with Arcade here, kind of as a. I love this. This is that ricochet shot that he's using here. That's badass. You start seeing Colossus Colossus. Now I'm doing. You start seeing Cyclops kind of be more skillful with his optic beams as the stories go on. Storm gives her mouth to mouth. Oh, that's just going out on a limb there, huh? And then, he comes to his senses. This isn't the issue. I was wrong. This is not the issue that began the kind of the divide between Claremont and Byrne. I remember having a great copy of the next two issues of this. This is Mystery on Muir Island. This will be Proteus. You got Jamie Madrox, the Multiple Man. You've got Havoc and Polaris. The dramatic return of the Phoenix. There's something awful on Muir Island. They somewhat adapted this. They tried to stay true to the comic book as much as they can on the X-Men 90s animated. If you watch those episodes, they go by this, where they're trying to study the Phoenix Force, and the conclusion comes that by Charles Xavier, too late, of course, that they should have put a psychic dampener on her, because the more they're trying to study Jean Grey and make Jean Grey like more comfortable with being the Phoenix, the more the Phoenix Force is like going to take control of her. So they kind of use this narrative. They kind of use this rough storyline, but she's worried. She's like, yeah, this is gonna end up bad. All of this is gonna end up bad. And you see this figure right here. This is Moira McTaggart's son, who is a mutant, who becomes a mutant X, and his power is he can warp reality, which is really bad for Wolverine. Because a lot of Wolverine's senses are based on like absolute reality. So he uses like warped reality against. He's really susceptible to, like, you saw it with like Sauron's hypnotic stare. And here they're training in the. They're still training, and at this point, the X-Men are divided still. Like they don't know Jean Grey's alive at this point. Here we have Wolverine. Here we have Magneto still nursing his injuries from his big battle with the X-Men. They have a little homage to the X-Men cover #1 right here. Not really the cover, but one of the panels that was in X-Men #1. I have a poster of the cover on my wall. So, yeah, it's actually a reversed image of all this. The actual cover of, is reversed. Magneto's over here. So I had to look at the poster. But you're getting more of a storyline of starting of the Hellfire Club stuff. There's Jason. There's Mastermind. I call him Mastermind. Where he's starting to slowly creep into the mind of Jean Grey. The Black Queen. Yeah, trying to alter her reality from the Phoenix, eventually to the Black Queen. They have the White Queen, who is Emma Frost, of course, Hellfire Club. They're based on like chess pieces, you know. But Proteus is Mutant X, and he becomes a real dangerous. See, you're alive. They didn't realize they were. It'd been all this time, and they did not realize they were the Beast and Jean Grey were alive. Jean's alive? Boy, is she ever going to be surprised. You betcha, boss man. You never really saw Cyclops mourn like he addressed it. He goes, I feel numb. I mourned for Hank McCoy, but I never mourned. They're trying to call, but things are going bad here. I heard Lorna scream, and then the line went dead. He's trying to call Scotland, and you see Mutant X out here, Proteus. In search of Mutant X. So they are storming off to Scotland. So they're not home very long. They're back on the run. Got Havoc. But I like the way they visualize Proteus and his powers. Like he can possess people. He's kind of like, he ends up possessing Jamie Madrox here. And it's kind of like that movie with Denzel Washington. One where that one serial killer spirit keeps, can't remember that. Really good movie, but he like goes from person to person. That's Proteus is kind of like that. Oh man. I'm just going to look through this issue and then I'm going to call it a night. But right here, he's trying to get into. Here, Proteus is trying to possess Wolverine, but there's something metal in it. He can only possess like pure organic forms, and he's like, metal, because this X-Man is full of metal, alien, deadly to me. Yeah, he can't possess like a cyborg type, you know. And of course, Wolverine's skeleton is laced with adamantium. Mutant who masters reality, and he can warp their senses and do all sorts of crazy things. I like the way they visualize all this. Wild. John Byrne must have, trying to figure out like how John Byrne approached drawing this. It'd be interesting to like listen to him talk about because he once you get like the forms, he's probably got that down pat, like all the forms of the X-Men. But now he's got to draw them all warped and everything. Might be easier. I don't know. I'm not really an artist, so there you see Proteus in his full form here of just like energy. And I had a beautiful copy of this comic book. This issue. I love this cover. This cover is amazing. The duotone on the cape, the effects they have on Storm's costume coming off the lighting of Proteus here. The power of Proteus, the deadliest mutant alive. I'm trying to figure out who did this cover. That's not Dave Cockrum. I don't think. Terry Austin, Byrne and Austin did it. Huh. Yeah, the Wolverine's kind of a dead giveaway. Byrne Austin. That Storm is not, though. That does not look like the face does, but like the body threw me off. The body throws me off. That's not a typical John Byrne figure. And I think Terry Austin has a little more hand in this. I just couldn't tell right off looking at it. I owned that comic book for so long, and I never thought about who did the cover. I just love the cover. Byrne Austin. I'm pushing my powers to the limit, not even slowing them down. And here's where you kind of learn more about Wolverine. You learn about Proteus that he can't possess metal, inorganic. But Wolverine's really torn up here because he's shaking. You really learn a lot about Wolverine here because he's like stuttering and shaking. You never see Wolverine like this torn up emotionally because the day I'm scared of you, he goes, dude, locked horn, and he throws coffee in his face because he's testing him. He's like, he's trying to snap Wolverine out of this problem that he's got because his little tussle with Proteus really shook him up. And you can see the effect of him shaking there, like but he's trying to play it off like it. But you learn that reality is, so they start battling here, and he uses Colossus as a ricochet to hit him in the back. Hold that pose, Colossus. I love this. This is a lost art in comic book writing. All of this, these thought bubbles, all this stuff. You just don't see this stuff anymore. You don't see them. They don't have character development like this anymore in these modern comic books. There's no charm to it. There's no, the craft is, they have no craft writing the comic books nowadays. You've never written a comic book. Well, who are you to talk? Yeah, that's true. I mean, I know my limitations. I'm not a poser. I wouldn't try to, the stuff they're trying to pass off as fucking comic book stories now. Oh my God, dude. Unbelievable, man. You got to read this guy here. Read King Cryptid. I'm telling you, man. This guy, this Peter Samedi, is this King Cryptid. Guy gets it. This guy, he gets in his writing, he gets Chris Claremont. Some guy on social media a couple of weeks ago was like, yeah, because I got the Chris Claremont John Byrne vibe when I read your comic book. And I was like, and I hadn't gotten the comic book yet. I hadn't gotten the mail yet. And I was like, yeah, you're full of shit. Yeah, sure. Sure he does. Well, he's right. He's mastered the mental and the vibe of John Byrne, Chris Claremont. You seem to be cutting out whenever it's probably just my microphone settings. They're probably not 100. I had to redo my settings, and my mic is not set for Like you're supposed to be here the whole time for this mic. That's why Joe Rogan on his podcast, he has these kind of mics. And he goes, make sure you have your. He has to remind guests every once in a while to put your microphone up. I could probably do something. I could probably change the settings a little bit, but it's good. Yeah, I shouldn't be. I should move the mic with me when I move, but no one cares. I mean, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, they're still battling. Oh, I'm on the wrong. Oops. I might want to go back to the right. Shove your face to the mic. Yeah, these mics are supposed to be 2 inches from your mouth the whole time. That's kind of how they're set up. One of the poker players on Twitch the poker player on Twitch that I follow, he just got one of these. Like last week, he just got one of these mics, and he sounds a lot better. But I've noticed people are like, "Yeah, you got to be right up to it," and it's true. You're supposed to be right up to it. When I turn my head, it's bad. So there's a video that like tells you the best like positioning for the mic to get the most out of these kind of mics, but I can't remember what it was. So here you have the reunion here of Jean Grey. Go full ASMR. I don't know how to do that. Yeah. I like ASMR though. Well, I like the hot chicks. Some dude, no, I don't give a shit. But yeah, we're still in the Proteus. They're still in the middle of battling Proteus here. Oh, I love this panel here. It crawls my skin. And a lot of people say that. I like it. Certain ones I really like. I don't watch it all the time. I mean, I subscribe to a couple of them. I mean, I'll admit I got nothing better to do. Go read comic books and do ASMR. The right here, turn the steering wheel into a snake. But it's just like perceptions of reality he can control. The action of the tiger. We can't let Proteus escape. We won't, Gene. I'm sorry, Sean, but Mora's right. Proteus must be stopped. But you got to remember, Proteus is Mora McTaggart's son. So they're kind of torn. And this issue, the day that reality went wild, that's Terry Austin. Somebody else too. Getting that right? That's George Perez. Yeah, it is George Perez. You can tell by the Cyclops. You can tell by the Colossus. I want to call Colossus Cyclops, and I want to call Cyclops Colossus. Never mind. You can tell by the Colossus. That's George Perez. Yep. So you get old George Perez coming on, filling in a nice cover here. The day reality went wild. That's badass. Oh man, I never knew that. I just learned that. I guess if I'd look at who signed it. Wow, you're seeing George Perez right before he went over to DC to do. He originally went over there to do Justice League, but he ended up doing New Teen Titans. Edinburgh, Scotland. I like the way they draw Proteus's eyes there. That's cool. That's cool coloring. But yeah, they're battling this. They're still battling Mutant X here. Very cool stuff. They get him in a crossfire here. Uh-oh. And then he dissolves into something. And then good thing my body is able to metabolize most of the power of Alex's bolts. And he is able to absorb mine. And his form is like withering away. But now he's like just his energy here. Not really even an energy, but yeah, it takes Colossus changing and hitting him full. This organic steel fist that spreads Proteus's like essence to the winds here. That's an iconic John Byrne panel right there of them flying up like that, being telekinetically lifted by Jean Grey, Phoenix, whatever. So the battle's over. Pretty cool. Now you've got Hellfire Club stuff coming on. So I'm going to end it right there. I'm not going to go through all. I mean, this is only issue 129. John Byrne went up to issue 142 before he left the book. And the last book I already went over last year. The one where Kitty Pryde fights that demon that looks like an alien, inspired by the alien, the xenomorph. That was the very last X-Men that John Byrne ever did. But this is Hellfire Club, and this is the first appearance. This issue, I believe, is the first appearance of Kitty Pryde, the Kitty Pryde character. And then the next issue is first appearance of Dazzler. Yep. 130. I had all of these, of course. Not anymore. Yep. I always have to try to look at the signature there. My eyes are going bad, so I'm gonna wrap it up right there. I gotta get to bed, get some sleep. It's 1:00. So, all right, that's some comic book talk. I haven't done this in a long time, but I mostly wanted to. I mostly wanted to go over this new stuff that I got. Yeah, I'll see you, Volts. Going over this cool Metal Shade comic book. And Isaac Bell, so talented, dude. Dude is sick. And then Peter Samedi and this Nick Hunter, King Cryptid, and the other artists. He's got different artists on every book, but I'm really in particular interested in the Nick Hunter issues. I'll be honest. But yeah, I'm gonna get out of here. I am out of here.